All right, hello dwarves. This is a new kind of episode we're going to be doing today. This is delving deep with the Steel City 20K Invitational event prep, and specifically with Boss and Show. Boss is number 88 in the Topdeck Top 100, so he has made the Invitational. Shodokan is here to help, you know, give assistance and you know be the guru in the deck that he is. And Rust is here in the background, who might pop up from time to time. First things first, congrats. It is pretty insane to be in the top 100 players of anything, especially in a game as variance laden as CDH. Um, so congrats, bud.
Yeah, much appreciated. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So the purpose of this episode is to figure out where your deck's at, why your deck's there, compare it to what we would consider like conventional wisdom, because you are definitely f- forging your own path and have been for a very long time. That's a good thing because it explores a lot of different avenues of deck building. But we need to establish where we've started before we start building towards where we need to be for this event. And we'll talk about the meta as we expect it to be based on that other 99 people, or 63 because of the 64-man tournament. And we'll make some assessments and adjustments based on those the expected meta. So this is delving deeper. So first of all, as of this morning, we have some pretty significant differences between the Magdanomicon and your list as it stands. Specifically, non-red land sources are lower. You have many more mountains. Um, you have a couple of untapped red sources that you've subbed out for mountains instead. Um, we'll talk about that. But pretty strikingly, you've cut a couple of stack spaces we would have considered auto includes and necessary, and you've added a couple of stack pieces that we would have thought
Sorry,
good.
I said sorry.
No, you're good. Uh, and you've added a couple of stack pieces that we have thought were like borderline marginal or a little too feast or famine, or there's a couple of reasons why they may or may not be in the list, but and they all have different applications and use cases and like percentage hits versus their misses. But aside from that, there's a couple of dwarves missing, a couple of utility pieces added. So we'll talk about all that. Show, where did you want to start with the comparisons?
So we we have, or at least where you're taking this is more in the lines of like hard stacks. And while I understand wanting to go that route, I think losing a lot of the interaction or things that help the deck function in situations where you've lost a main win line or outlet can be quite risky. And specifically, while red sources are very powerful and something that I also believe we should be on more than we're not, giving up like the utility of something like a command beacon um, can make or break things, specifically because, before we started the whole recording, we were talking about lands a little bit. And there are a lot of games where we don't end up with a lot of lands. And if you do end up with Command Tower, it puts Magda down to a 2 cost rather than being the 6 cost or whatever she's going to end up being with a Bow Masters Rife meta. Um, so that's something that like I would like your opinion on is like what what why do you think that the more feast or famine stacks pieces, such as Tangle Wire or Trinisphere, are worth it in the current metagame or what you feel like you're going to be going into? And then why do you think that cutting something like Battered Golem or specifically Maskwood Nexus, even if you're not playing Battered Golem, um, is like a route that you want to be taking? And another thing that I want to mention is that you and I have had conversations over the past 6 months where we both are in agreement that having more dwarves is more important because it's very relevant to our main game plan. And if we are not able to consistently maintain a board of dwarves, we are likely to lose that game.
So I guess the first question is the I guess the stacks gameplay as a primary game plan. How do you fall on that? How do you like what's your justification and and the value proposition for going down that avenue of deck building?
Sure. Yeah. So I think it's worth mentioning that where I play locally in Florida, but also just a lot of places, uh, CEDH players tend to play, I don't want to say turbo, but they very much want to do the thing their deck does. And at times, you'll get put into a pod with a Roxai, a Raw, like a faster deck than we can ever be. And I think players at times will mulligan, looking at hands saying, "Does this hand allow me to do the thing my deck does?" Without considering like things like seat order and when they're going to get their window versus when their opponent's going to get their window. And I've just far too often experienced, the turn two Rogsai and never getting another turn. So like things like, and sometimes they can sound like magical Christmas land, but a Mishra's Workshop on turn two into a Trinisphere sometimes can be enough to like be the difference to like keep you alive. And I say Trinisphere, but in reality, I'm really looking to stick like Thorn, Sphere of Resistance, things like that on curve. Like if I can do a game where I go turn one Dwarf, turn two Sphere or Thorn, and turn three Magda, even for 3 mana, I feel really, really good about that game. Because and a lot of times I'm just not going to get that many more turns before I can realistically put a win while also not experiencing any type of interaction for my win condition. So that's kind of why I like to look at like things like Chalice of the Void, Thorn, Sphere. Tanglewire is a little bit different. It can be sometimes of a kind of a tempo play where as long as you don't see Bowmaster, Tanglewire is a house. But that's a big what if.
Right.
Um, so that's just a thought when it comes to those types of stacks pieces specifically. I'm sure we could talk about some of the other ones that I'm currently on, with the understanding that this list is going to slightly
Potentially
change.
change.
Yes, there's going to be a couple cards. I already know the list we're going to look at for considerings. So yeah, so that's at least where I'm at with some of the stacks, and then showed yeah.
The one thing that I want to say specifically about Tanglewire is the main reason that I preach so hard that the card is garbage is that there is a trigger. Your opponents need one single mana to be able to bounce Magda or remove Magda with a Swords to Plowshares, or in your case, talking about Bowmasters coming in and getting its ETB, and then killing Magda. And then you are up shit's creek. You probably are not getting back in that game, and or if you are, you need a very specific hand for that to happen. And I think the variance is just so high that it can be very detrimental to really rely on your opponents not, I guess, having it in a way, especially when they know that using their resources to stop you from getting ahead when that's out, it should be the most important thing. And like, this is another thing that we're going to be talking about a little bit later, as far as like your mentality of, how you're going to be treating the tournament in general. versus like, you know, the caliber of player. But the situations that you were talking about where you have to make decisions around your opponents not playing respectfully of the decks at the table, I think is going to be a lot less relevant in an invitational like this, where it's only the quote unquote top players. Sure, it's still going to happen where people are going to want to do what their deck does, but that's going to be more specifically when it's a turbo versus turbo or a pseudo turbo versus pseudo turbo sort of style. And yes, I agree that a lot of people like to just play greedily. Um, but in general, like, that's not always the case, right?
Yeah, yeah. So let me. I want to kind of give you a thought here. Um, so I completely agree with that. In fact, some of the card choices that I have picked are intentionally because I expect players to play not only the correct plays, but also to play with interaction in mind. So there was an article like a while back. I know it was when I first started getting into playing Magda, from Sam Black, and it was talking about Gustavo's stacks list. And there's a line in there that I think the average seed each player doesn't think about when they play against Magda. Most people sit down in a pod, and I've had this comment made to me endless times. Oh, well, there's only one turbo deck in the pod, and it's Magda. And I'm like looking around, like, who's on turbo?
Right.
So what happens is players will look at Magda, go, oh, that's a turbo deck. I'll play my game plan and my play style, and because I play slower and oftentimes on curve, I actually don't get the level of interaction used against me that I think an average Magda player would. That goes dwarf, Magda, something else to accelerate, and then I'm going to instantly like jam, because you're almost always going to lose in that situation because the combo is really fragile. Um, especially early on, turn
Yeah.
3 or turn 4.
Yep.
So that's been my play style. It's served me pretty well. And again, I think even in a pod with 4 really, really good players, you still have to do threat evaluation. And I've used this phrase before, but it's sometimes like I'm just not the gator closest to the boat. You've got to worry about the rock side. You've got to worry about the row.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, eventually I'm going to get there. That's the best thing about our deck is just the inevitability. But I'm not going to force early interaction with my playstyle. And I think that's worked out really well.
Sure.
Okay. I think that most Magna pilots have leaned in that direction, at least up until the advent of our dear Lord Go-Go.
Yeah. So the other thing that I want to touch on again is that those conversations that we've had about being dwarf heavy on creatures, now you're kind of going away from that a little bit. And can you expand on why you think that is? Or
Yeah, absolutely. So there's 3 dwarves in particular right now that I've got to make a decision on, and I'm leaning towards finding space for them. It just becomes a matter of synergy and what other card pieces do I want to have in the list. But
Sure.
it would be Gloin and Gimli. And if
Mhm.
I'm playing Gimli, I almost always want to play Axe Guard Cavalry, but it's not mandatory.
Right.
But if you can go like a turn 1 Axe Guard, turn 2 Magda, turn 3 Gimli, you're feeling really good. So just things like that that I've got to consider. I tend to want higher creatures, but I also expect more board wipes than I would probably traditionally expect to see. So I've got to think about that as well. Whereas like a impactful stacks piece might just have more, like I might get more EV out of a stacks piece than I will like a just a dwarf that might get killed. So
Sure.
I don't know.
We
I'm
can we can
still
talk about
still
that a
thinking
little
about
bit
it.
more when we go over meta, because like I
Yeah.
actually disagree with you that I
Yeah.
think you're not going to see as many board wipes as you
Yeah,
might think
I
that
think
you are.
so. We will
It's
go back.
possible. Yeah.
We'll go back to the considering after we've talked about the meta real quick.
Yeah. And I will say, guys, since the Atlanta tournament back in February, I have been sky high on number of creatures in the deck. I've almost always been around 30, if not like 28 minimum.
You've been
Um,
playing a list that's similar enough to
yeah.
mine.
Yeah.
Um,
So just a lot of like dwarves are just some of the best things you can be doing is just playing creatures. And what's been nice is going up to this weekend, the blue farm decks are super greedy. They don't want to be playing Toxic Deluge on their turn.
Yeah.
Like I expect to see like Fire Covenant, stuff like that. Maybe Fire Magic potentially, but they don't want to play Sorcery Speed board wipe removal. So yeah, so it's definitely something to think about.
So we've already covered most of those first questions,
Yep.
except for the last one, and that is when you're playing a more stacks heavy game plan like you're currently potentially going to be bringing to the event.
Yep.
What do you think the worst matchup into that version of the build is?
Oh, dude, the worst matchup and the deck I always hate to see is Broadside. It is turn two every single time, and my turn two is almost like if I in a perfect world is just Magda on curve. So if I can't get to turn three, which is the turn where I get some amount of treasures, I get my mana unlocked, and I could potentially have interaction, I just feel like my hands are tied. Because I think we would all agree, for the most part, going Dwarf, Magda, and then untap on turn three is like where most of us want to be at.
Yeah.
Because it's really good. You'll have three
So
treasures.
I have a question with that in mind.
Yeah.
If you are if you're like playing towards like this game plan where you can mulligan for hard stacks or turbo stacks hands, where you can just dump a amethyst or a chalice and put a monkey wrench in that kobold mechanism. I if that's just like if you feel like you're still just coin flipping, I guess my question is, why are you sacrificing what feels to be a very consistent, inevitable game plan to try to, piss in the wind over a deck that we just can't really race and it's not our problem to fix?
Or another way to look at it is why do you think it is your job to be the one to control that deck, especially in a meta where 90% of all other decks in the format play blue will have their instant spell or free instant speed counters and
Yeah.
all that stuff.
Yeah. So here's the thought process. And like, um, I've only really ever played Magda. I've sleeved other things up, but I've only ever brought Magda to tournaments.
Right.
But I have like started playing Blue Farm just to like better understand the deck and like
Hmm.
to figure out some of the points.
Yep.
So while you're right, like a Thorn of Amethyst, like uh it doesn't stop Blue Farm by any means. It does something that I think is really powerful against it, and it makes the mana extremely tight. Like Blue Farm could have half of its deck in its hand. Cards are never the issue. It's mana and specific, and at times specific colors. But like, if you try to get an average, I mean, I've had a buddy that I've been just play testing against the last couple of weeks on Rockside. If you put a Thorn out and you say, "Hey, breach through this," or like fight through this without a bounce spell, they're struggling. They usually don't have enough cards in the graveyard. It taxes everything, and unless they specifically have one or two bounce effects, it's on the board. Those stacks pieces are never going away. And guess what? If they're bouncing Thorn of Amethyst, I am loving it as a Magda pilot, because that's something that isn't hitting one of my creatures or my combo pieces. So the amount of interaction that Blue Farm, which is the deck we're going to see the most of, has for some of these answers just isn't good, and it's not super consistent. So worth also mentioning, like the Tangle Wire situation show. Um, what I've been as I watch like some critical EDH videos around piloting decisions on Blue Farm. I guess with Magda in the pod, a Blue Farm pilot might look at Bowmaster and go, "Yeah, this is really good against Magda." But I think your really, really good Blue Farm players are just going to try to win before Magda's a problem.
Oh, I
So I don't.
100% agree.
They're not keeping a hand with Bowmaster. They're looking for a turn one Esper, Fish, or turn two Ristic. Like if Bowmaster's there, it's just there. So that's where I go. There's a pretty good chance you just don't see it, but you also can get unlucky. And again, there's basically every deck playing black is on Bowmaster. But sometimes just going, Dwarf, Magda, and depending on seat order, turn three Tanglewire on curve is really, really good. Even if you just get one turn, before they can tutor a piece or what have you. So it's just like the Blood Moon situation, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point. You just got to make those decisions before you, uh, you know, decide on your mulligans, and you got to ask yourself like, how do I think this pod's going to play out? Um, because the last thing I'll say about Blue Farm is you typically don't want to be the Blue Farm pilot in the pod answering the problem. You want to be the one asking the questions,
Yes, for
because
sure.
that's the one that's going to win the game, right?
Right. But that's also like that's the situation that comes up, right? Is that when you're in a pod with these decks, you want them to be forced to ask the question and then get answered by someone else,
Mhm,
right? And like let's just say your pod's like Rogsai Blue Farm, you and then Sisay or something, right?
mhm,
And that could be a very likely pod, right?
mhm,
In this sort of invitational.
mhm,
In those situations, like why is it your job to speed bump the Rogsai or your job to speed bump the turbo slanted blue farm?
mhm.
Like, is
Well,
it
I
not
so
is it not like comparing what you're saying is like you want to be proactive in slowing your opponents down rather than parasitic and forcing them to fight each other and then once they've used their resources just winning.
Hmm.
yeah, so I guess one thing is like I don't feel that it's my job. I wouldn't say like I'm obligated to interact here. In fact, like when players will look at me for interaction, I'll say like I'm not lying and I'm not even really being disingenuous, but I'll say I'm on mono red, man. What do you expect from me? Like you're right, I could have a piece of interaction, but it does not mean I'm going to use it because I know either that you've got something or you just for whatever reason it is they're going to try to get all the information they can get out of the table.
Right.
Um, but the other thing is like while a like let's just go through a very like a very normal on curve play style with that pod that you just described.
Sure.
Dwarf, Sphere of Resistance, Magda, right?
Hmm.
What happens is that Sphere of Resistance, depending on the number of dorks that Sisse has out, is going to make it one. And of course, if I'm in front of Roxai, that's important to mention. It's going to make Roxai almost impossible for them to win on that turn specifically. It also allows Blue Farm to still be able to interact for the most part. I think what we've players that pick up stacks, one of the mistakes they make is that you want to use a hard punishing stacks effect that kind of stops people from playing the game, and that's sometimes that's just bad. Like I want to make it really really difficult for someone to win the game, but I don't want to make it impossible for them to be able to answer my other opponents. And at times, just making something cost one more is a totally reasonable effect to play. And again, with this quality of players, like it's not like I have to walk my opponents through how to navigate the stacks
Yeah.
that you might have to do at a local, 32 tournament, right? Because
Right. But
yeah, so
also by that same logic, if you don't have to walk them through it, they should know that you are very unlikely to have an answer and they will need to be forced to use their answer regardless of if that piece is there or not. And as you said, you're coin flipping seat order if you're ahead of Rogsai and Blue Farm or not. And if you're not, that turn two win doesn't get stopped, right? Unless the Blue Farm or the Sisse specifically has the free interaction to stop it.
I guess that's another thing to think about. So, and this goes all the way back to pod composition, seed order, and like mulliganing decisions. Just because there's stacks pieces in my deck does not mean that I'm always playing a Staxy game plan. In fact, like we reflected after that top four game in Atlanta, where my play one was Ancient Tomb Metallic Mimic,
Right.
which was just insane. And I just played creatures after creatures, and
Mhm.
they just didn't have enough answers, and that was just enough to get me there. But I was seat one. I was in a pod that had two turbo decks, but one deck that had mulliganed really low. So I was like, all right, well, I'm just going to keep pressing. I didn't look for a stacks piece. But there's also times where, let's say, I'm in seat one in that hypothetical pod you threw out, show,
Mhm.
and a Chalice of the Void shows up in my hand. I'm well, again, assuming there's two lands and at least one other creature, I'm keeping that hand because that Chalice on turn one, not only does it lock Roxai out of the game, Blue Farm like they can't cast their LED. Like there's spells that make it impossible for them to just oops I win. They always have Thassa and Democon as a backup, but that's not something they're anticipating when they sit down in this pod. They're not going to think, oh, Magda's going to throw out a Chalice on 1 or on 0, and I'm not going to be able to play my rocks because I need fast mana. I can't play my LED. That's my main win con. So just things like that can make it like really difficult. And I really want to just trip people up. I don't ever want to lock almost any of my opponents out of the game, because then it makes me like a must answer for them to even have a chance. So I think my like stacks game plan is to make it really, really difficult to win the game, but not impossible to play the game.
Sure.
Yeah, I guess with that question or with that like mindset in mind, Blood Moons.
Mm-hmm.
It turned some games into a 1v2 because the fourth player is not playing anymore. How do you, I guess, square the circle on that mindset of like I don't want to turn off people from playing, which Blood Moon absolutely does.
Yeah.
And the fact now you're kind of in a lopsided 1v2.
Sure.
Especially because like the moon effects in a way need to be coupled with another stacks piece.
Mhm.
Otherwise it's usually just not enough.
Yeah, like there's the best time you want to be playing that effect is like turn 2, and it probably means that you need to be seat 1 or 2. And another thing you just have to consider, and you're okay with this if you're playing it, is that if somebody gets out a Ragavan and like a Mox Amber or another free spell or free ramp piece, you probably just have to sit on that Blood Moon. So you shouldn't be keeping hands just because it has it, unless you know like my opponents just aren't going to be able to get out a ton of like mana that's going to get them all their colors. But again, it's just one of those things where when it works, it'll be one of the easiest wins you've ever gotten. Like I've played a Blood Moon effect before against a blue farm player who just didn't play Magic again. I know I said I don't want to stop my opponents from not playing, but if I can stop all of them from playing, then I'm okay with that. So it just becomes a decision of, if I play this and there is one person that's available, and I'll give you an example. I've played it in a pod before where there was a Malcolm that was alive, and the decision to play it was because I also knew that I could rev it and kill it before it got the treasure. So I played the Blood Moon. Opponents are locked out. They ended up tapping their mana down, and when they were going to combat, I blasted the Malcolm, and then I was able to win that game pretty clearly, or pretty easily. But you just have to think about what does the next turn or two look like if this affects sticks. Because I pitched games before too. The first time I put a Blood Moon on the battlefield and my opponent had a Ragavan and that opponent ran away with it because they got their colors and I couldn't answer that opponent, I felt like an idiot. I was like, why am I playing this card? It's terrible. So you just have to be able to think about it.
You do have to be able to think about it, but like, and I know you're very much more a play by feel person than a math person, but like the type of situation where you're like, okay, I specifically need a turn 2 Blood Moon. I need an answer to the person that might be able to get out from under it. And I also need a game plan that lets me get to 5 treasures by turn 5, right? That's asking a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that. So we've talked about this way back when, but I think Magda more than probably any other deck, at least mono red, we don't have the access to tutors, which makes our like the consistency outside of tutoring for Magda or with Magda makes it really difficult. So when you're doing like the quote unquote math, I think we discussed Mox Diamond. You really like, yes, it's fair to do that, but I think on average, a normal Magda pilot is probably only seeing 13 cards a game, 14 cards maybe, like your average turn 3, turn 4 game, depending on what they're doing. So your first 7 or just first starting hand is so important because you're probably only seeing like another 5 cards off the top of your deck. So there's a world where like that Mox Diamond with the 3 lands in your hand is good enough on top of whatever you're going to draw versus like just expecting it to not be one of the cards you're going to draw after your starting 7. And then I would make the argument the math's actually in your favor that you're not going to see it versus it being bad because you might see it, if that makes any sense.
It's not even specifically for Mox Diamond that like you are. So like specifically what you're saying is like you're fine with those hands that are like Mox Diamond and then 3 lands and then, riding the wave. But like as soon as you get below 7, that card becomes much harder to warrant keeping. And yes, you can just be like, I can just throw it away and put it back in my deck. But like I don't want a card that's only effective in my first 2 mulligans, if effectively, and then dead in deck.
Yeah, so
Like
I
that.
think that, that's fair. I think that's totally fair. And that's why, for the longest time, these specific cards I have been, if not completely off on, just very down. Spirit Guide, Chromox, Lotus Petal, and Gemstone Caverns. And Pyrokinesis too. Again, all those cards have great ceilings, but every card that puts us down a card when we're already such like limited on the number of cards we're going to see, I usually do not like them. Like I don't know how many games where I've played a gemstone and like won that game, because it's certainly not because of the gemstone. Um, because every time I do that, like my hand gets thinner and thinner, and then I all of a sudden I'm in top deck mode. Which, the situation where you described 3 lands, a Mox Diamond, and let's say there's 2 creatures, that's really good. Like, if I'm not looking for stacks pieces, 3 creatures for Magda, including the commander, is usually enough. Like you're gonna be able to get there, especially if one of them is the artifact dwarf itself, which is why I've been basically playing every artifact dwarf that you can play. Um, so that's just a thought about some of those cards, but I really don't like the cards that force you to discard down. I think when you're over 30 lands, the Mox Diamond is, I think it's fair to play. But you just accept that if you top deck it, it sucks.
Sure. I think that like I'm in a similar boat where I didn't like the pitching effect of a lot of those cards. Um, or even things like Lotus Petal because it's one-time use, right?
Mhm.
Um, but specifically for like Chrome Mox, because it's not completely dead if
Mhm.
you draw it in the mid game, even if you don't have red cards where I'm playing this for 0, this helps me untap clock. Like
Yeah.
it's a little bit better. And
Yeah.
I'm not
I
saying that
agree. Yeah.
it's that much better than like a Mox Diamond, but it's way cheaper. Um, but realistically, I was also down on cards like Pyrokinesis because,
Mhm.
like you were saying, pitch cards. But the more that I've been back on it, I'm fine going down a card to influence the game enough to the point where, like, you know, just like you were saying, you had a game where you blew out a Malcolm. I had a game where I blew out all 3 players. I had another game where I blew out 2 of my opponents. And then it was a pseudo 1v1 that I knew I could win.
Mhm.
Um, so it's like, yes, that card needs to resolve, but if it does, it's very beneficial. And the fact that you just get to keep it in your hand as long as you have red cards in your hand, which we should, being mono red, um, sometimes you just have to be able to make that decision of I need to interact here versus my dwarf needs to come down next turn. Because sometimes you casting that there, and then forcing interaction where your opponents then get to back you up, um, gets you that extra turn that you need to potentially turn the corner.
Yeah, and that's fair. But like the other thing you got to consider, especially with like a pyrokinesis type effect, is that this isn't a like when you think about the main decks, which I know Drew's got a slide
Mm-hmm.
for that. Um, you got to think about some of these pieces of interaction. While they're objectively good cards, like I'm like for instance, it's a Wise Justice. Like it's a considering, but it's not. You basically got to think about your interaction of like, how do I not lose this game? And I don't think those types of effects are necessarily something that's going to help me from not lose. Um, like being able to kill creatures just isn't super important. And the only creature deck with, I mean, that's not counting Thrasios, is going to be Kinnan or Sisse. And they're going to usually have an answer for our one piece of removal. So if you go Pyrokinesis, pitch a card, and they can counter it, that is awful. I just don't know how that's going to work out in your favor. But if you're playing in pods that have a bunch of creature-based decks that aren't, on a bajillion pieces of or removal or interaction, then it's probably fine.
Sure, but then you also have the I get to leverage my opponents being better
Mhm.
in an event like this, where I can
Mhm.
be like, hey, I know you want to hold the interaction that you have for when you're going to push. But taking this player potentially out of the game makes it into a better situation for you, knowing that, depending on what the situation is for me,
Yeah.
obviously you're only making that sort of a political play when you know that you're like 2 turns away from being able to like jam a roaming throne
Right.
and like pushing for that win yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, sure, those situations suck, but you also have to think about it as a way of that stops them from having an extra piece of interaction that allows them to win the game.
So something that's come to mind, we've often talked about not stripping our opponents' resources unnecessarily, so that
Mhm.
we don't deny the table an extra out to a win attempt. But
Sure.
when you're about to turn that corner and you think you are in the best position to turn the corner, that's the time at which you want the table to go shields down,
Yeah.
because you can always go on top, which means someone's going to have to, if you can strip a couple of cards, in general,
Mhm.
and then someone else sees the shields down and they go for it. Now the scant resources remaining go to that, and then you can pop off over top or something to that effect. That's still like
Yeah.
an ideal Magda situation, and I think that's something to just some nuance on the don't make your opponents use interaction, like kind of truthism.
I think this is something worth thinking about because we were, specifically we're talking about interaction on opponents' creatures. Um, if you look at all the card types in the deck, the instance that I've selected, that is the most. Basically, I'm not leaving home without those spells. Like that is as tight as you can get for a card choices. Like my
Yeah.
land base is less consistent than those spells. I almost always have that package of cards in my deck. But the reason why I have less than your typical Magda player is I think a lot of pilots have a hole burning in their pocket and they want to use the interaction on opponents' creatures. I only want to use interaction if that spell is either I'm losing or creature is I'm losing the game or I can't win the game. And those three creatures are Drannith, Bowmaster, and Oppo. Like those are usually the three creatures that I want to kill. If I've got to kill a Kinnan or something else, I will. But I almost always want to pass on using interaction until I absolutely have to.
Yeah.
And there's been times where I look back and I go, that was a mistake. I shouldn't have interacted there. I should have just waited. That wasn't that as scary as I thought it was.
So I agree with you, right? However, my mentality is consistency is more important, and I want the answer when I need the answer. So I am more than willing to have 2 pieces of interaction at hand and then just let something happen because I know I'm going to likely need it for the opponent that's keeping up their, 1 black mana specifically that I know they might have Dark Rit Oppo. They're waiting for either my opponents to tutor or me to tutor because our deck doesn't have a lot of answers for that unless you're specifically on Pyrite Spellbomb
Mhm.
and you have 10 treasures, which is a very uncommon situation.
Yeah, you're not getting that. I think the other maybe this is something else worth thinking about that I don't know that I've ever heard anyone really talk about this, but we think of like interaction as like instants and maybe sorceries. But really, an early stacks piece is a form of interaction. It's just being proactive rather than reactive. And when I always talk about this, but I don't like, I want to win more than anything, but I really hate losing. So there's been 3 events, including Atlanta, where I've gone undefeated in Swiss in large tournaments, 6+ rounds. And it's because that's my mentality going into it, is that I want to put myself into the most advantageous situation where I can make the game go long, and through attrition and really inevitability because of Magda herself, I'm able to then present a win. Like, I think again, too many pilots are like, "Oh, quick! I got to 5 treasures. I got to activate right here," and it's like, chill out a little bit. You got to
Sure.
really think about, does this make sense? And again, when you play that play style of, I want to stick an early stacks piece on turn 1 or turn 2, and then force the game to be played at a low resource level, not impossible, but it's really like, what are the main win cons you expect to see in an event where Blue Farm and some version of Turbo is overwhelmingly dominating the field? It's Underworld Breach, almost always Breach. Um, and then, of course, Thassa Demo, but we'll get into why Torpor Orb isn't in the deck currently. But I really want to think about stopping Breach and whatever other strategies can be kind of secondhand neutered by that.
Right.
So the
And I,
taxing effects, the graveyard effects, like those ones are really, really good right now.
and I don't think that, like, in general, going for the specific choices of stacks pieces that interact well with breach is necessarily a bad thing. Um, I do think, like, if we're talking about cards that do that, like Disruptor Flute, specifically because it stops LED, it stops a bunch of other important things.
Yep.
Mhm.
For different matchups. That that card's too strong, in my opinion, even in a meta that doesn't have a shitload of Kinnan and Sisay,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
because you're still going to have enough Thrasios.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah.
And Thrasios decks all, you know, need to be doing something, looping something. Same thing for all the Underworld Breach things. Like,
I
but
agree
yeah,
with you. Yeah, flute is definitely like a strong considering right now. Like when we put the list together just to look over a kind of a baseline, but like Ghost Vacuum and Soul Cauldron probably don't both make it in the deck. So then it becomes a decision of, do I value the ceiling of Soul Cauldron versus like Urza Saga or um, you know, uh
Ezzy.
Tezzeret, yeah, Tezzeret being able to grab a Ghost Vacuum. Like
we have so
those
many
are
other
little,
good choices that
yeah.
Ghost Vacuum wouldn't even be something I consider in
Yeah.
most
I
of those
I
scenarios.
think that card might be a little underrated right now.
Sure, but in specifically the meta that you're looking at, going and grabbing your Graph Digger's Cage is going to get you a lot more value
Oh,
than a Ghost
absolutely,
Vacuum.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Your
like,
Cage is probably the best stacks effect in the deck. I'll just go ahead and say that right now. Like playing that on turn 1 is almost always something I want to be doing.
Yep.
you get groans immediately from anyone playing Breach decks, and
Yep.
they're just
Oh
like,
yeah,
God damn it.
yeah, yeah. In fact, if you said if you could have one card in your starting hand every single time, it would be a Grafdigger's Cage. And I would play that on turn 1, and I don't care what the pot is, because that effect, whether it's creature to the battlefield tutors or graveyard shenanigans, anything like that, is just so good.
I mean,
Partial.
that's also important to note is that you and I play more artifact dwarves than Rust does, right?
Hmm.
So, like,
Hmm.
we can more comfortably in every single game look to jam that turn one Graph Digger's Cage and know that the likelihood of us drawing into an artifact dwarf is going to be high
Yeah,
enough that we can take that risk basically no matter what the pot is.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even look at that as a downside to that card. The ceiling is so high that the like one time you get like, and again, I've never not been able to win with my own cage on the battlefield. Um, it just is not something that I'm like super concerned about. We have so many ways to get around it.
Yeah. Like, I don't consider the fact that it makes you work for it a downside
Mhm.
because
Yeah,
most of the time you can work through it.
yeah. If we just, I'll leave you with this, especially
Yeah.
with cage. But when you think about blue farm, because again, that's going to be the deck that we see the most. When it comes to playing something like a thorn or a cage or some kind of like early stacks piece, and you look at the blue farm list, the answers that it has to that piece, it's so far and few. And it wasn't until I started playing the deck, just casually, that I started to like realize that, where I'm like, if you don't, like, you have Odawara probably, and you get either Chain or maybe Into the Flood Maw. They're usually not on all those effects. So you've got two answers. You don't want to be using your Mystical Tutor to grab a a bounce effect. You're probably just trying to draw as many cards to try to find something, but they don't always have the answer for the stacks pieces. So that's just something to think about, when we're looking at deck building choices.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think that, like, because we're on so many artifact dwarves, and especially if you're on more stacks, you can definitely paint a big red bullseye on your head very easily.
Yeah,
So it's just
yeah,
one of
that's
those things
definitely
you have to
possible.
be comfortable about.
Yeah, that's definitely possible.
So
And we have the last question
yeah,
talking about Great Train Heist.
yep.
And, like, this is a card that you've played for a while.
Yeah.
Both Rust and I have tested it extensively, and we get 0 success out of the card. So why do you think that you should still be playing it?
Card has an incredibly high floor. It is, we talk about, like, we get to a situation, and I know Drew had some groans when I showed him the changes to the list. So Cavern Horde was one of the cards that I originally had on there because of our gameplay. We eventually do get to a state where we are top decking cards. Top decking a Great Train Heist when you already have like 2 creatures on the board and like maybe 1 or 2 cards in hand is so good because you probably already have like 4 lands and maybe some treasures. So, if you're going to combat and you're already over 5 treasures, that's a big signal that either there isn't removal on the board currently, or you can play around it. So then you go Great Train Heist. Again, 2 mana, it's make 2 treasures. That's usually the floor. But if you can spree out, it's just nuts. That can be the thing that gets you to 10 treasures really, really quickly. Because you always cast it when blocks are made, but not before damage. And when you do that, and there's a Roxai or someone that has the board open that can get hit, you make a ton of treasures. You make like an activation's worth just off of that card. So it being modal, it being an instant speed, like that card's, I think every Magda pilot should be on it. Doesn't matter what version of the deck you're playing. It's that good.
It's also the single most counterable thing in the deck, and it also
Yeah.
is
Oh, yeah.
the single most screaming counter me right now, or I.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it doesn't.
Have I paid 5 mana and been mental misstep before? Yes. But I've also won games that I had no business getting another turn or winning the game.
Yeah, I'm okay not winning games and not winning games in that way and not having dead draws. That's just
I don't think it's dead.
I
I don't
think
I
it.
don't think it's dead at all. You can cast it to untap your creatures. You don't even need the extra combat. Like there's a lot of ways to use that card that people don't necessarily think about. Like you have a vehicle out, you're not like, so you have a board state that you can only hit 4 treasures because you have a vehicle. Look, guys, the most I can get is 4. Blah blah blah. They do their things, and then you play Great Train Heist. Um, you know, crew. You have an activation or crew activation. One of your artifact doors are untapped. Boom, there's a win. No one sees that coming. And I've done that before. So it's something that can absolutely happen. You just got to think about where the window to use that card is. And I don't think it's ever a dead draw. I think late game, early game, it's always live.
I think it's always a live card, but I think that it's always not in your favor when you're casting it.
Yeah, that's
Um,
possible. Yeah, I'll tell you what, Jessica's Will is in a similar light where I don't like the ceiling on Jessica's Will is super high, but it almost always eats a counter spell, and for the most part, I don't want to be playing spells that force my opponents to counter it. There's
good
just some
players
that,
don't counter
yeah.
Jessica's Will.
Yeah, that's
I,
how
I
I
agree
feel.
with you. I agree with you. That's why it's still in my deck, but it has been countered
Oh yeah,
often.
you'll still get a bunch of people that will counter it because they're like, I'm scared that he's gonna flip the roaming throne and have just enough mana. And then that's when you know this player doesn't have
Yeah,
force of will. So this is
yeah.
also like there was a game that I had in an event where someone specifically was like, I am worried about this. And then I
Mhm.
looked at them and I said, so you want to use your free interaction that is not force of will because you don't have force of will in hand to stop specifically roaming throne. And they're like, yeah.
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah,
just like, what if I just say if I hit roaming throne, I won't cast?
yeah.
Like,
I think that's where good players aren't gonna counter it, but if it sticks, that's what we need. Like we an extra 3 us seeing an extra 3 cards is so good. Especially if
yeah.
one of them's a land drop, and then one's a creature, and then maybe a piece of interaction or like something else that we can cast. And that is so good. So I have to keep the card in the deck. My lived experience has just been awful with it because my flip sucked sometimes too. But then
Yeah.
also, like sometimes you just flip the nuts, and it's like, okay. So I put it like Bottle Cap Blast, Great Train Heist, like Jessica's Will. The ceiling is so high on some of these cards that I don't know that we can afford to not play them because I don't think you can give me 99 other cards that are just that much better than it.
Sure. Let's
Yeah.
wrap this section up and move
Yeah.
on to meta.
Yeah, I want to talk about I want to talk about specifically in the context of like your Rog Thras Kinnan plus style decks where you're going to end up with a more clogged board state than you would normally. Specifically you have Rag in here and you've cut Gimli. So I'm just wondering, like, what's the logic for having the monkey over, really any of the other dwarves?
So I think that's a totally fair question. With the amount of Blue Farm players we're going to see in a pod, Blue Farm is usually not casting a creature that can realistically, well, that they realistically will be blocking with Ragavan. Um, Esper, like all of the common turn 1 through 3 cards you're going to see from Blue Farm, Esper
Esper,
Sentinel,
Lotho, etc.
Lotho, Timna, like they're not blocking your Ragavan.
Yeah,
They're just
Tataru.
not.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're well, Tataru has 3 toughness, I think.
Yeah.
So that one might block, but that card's not being played as much right now. It might be more,
Mm,
you're usually going to get in.
Yep.
I don't think like no one's trading a Timna for a Ragavan, especially when it's literally just let me see a treasure. And then I think like there's a good. I think Gimli's going to probably find his way back in, but like having Mox Amber in the deck, having some of the more higher number of legendaries is just better.
Yeah.
But there's been like I remember the Albuquerque tournament. It was Ragavan turn 1, Magda turn 2, PFB turn 3, win the game. And I got God's Hero statue and then won on like the following turn. So it was just it can be nutty. But again, I think like if we had more 1 mana dwarfs, I would just play a 1 mana dwarf over Ragavan. It's not super great. I've taken it out before, but currently it's in.
Okay.
I think for a meta that is primarily, which we'll be looking at the meta shortly, but like Ragavan is perfectly fine into this meta specifically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
just because of the number of Blue Farm players.
Yep. So let's move on to that. Our competition. So we have I painstakingly went through the top 100 people and figured out the last 3 decks that were available that they had played in a tournament. Eschewed some of the smaller ones that were obviously just kind of like fun stuff at locals, and crunched the numbers to see which decks came up most. That was for using the top deck numbers. I also referenced the EDH top 16, which isn't as an enlightening, but I want to compare the two for just for context. So you have 25% of the almost 26% of the top 100 is going to be playing Timnacrom. It'll likely be even higher than that. I think you are going to see quite a few of these decks or these players not even consider the bottom like 20 commanders on this list. Even the good ones, even like the viable ones, because they're just not Timnacrom. After that, you have 15 or 14.2% Rogsai, and then 7% TNT, 6.7% Sisay, 6.7% Rog Thras, and then just under 5% for Kinnan, and a few Tim the Dargo sprinkled in there. You might have one Dog Thras. So those are like the big ones. and the ones you have to be most worried about. And I'll say, just in general, I think that specifically Timnachrom, Rogsai, not necessarily TNT, but Timna Dargo and Rogthras are probably going to have higher numbers than they show here, as some of these more marginal one-off one-off commanders are uh just drop off the list effectively.
Mhm.
I think you will see not very many VVs. You'll probably not see very many Thras files or Tivets. You might get a couple of Marniuses.
So
I
you're
think you're gonna
also
have Gold
going to
Saber too.
see
Yeah, gold.
you're also going to see likely more Kefka than is shown
Yes.
here,
Yes.
because Kefka specifically is very good into blue farm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Kefka's good in the blue farm, and a lot of the people that are playing wrong side right now have picked up Kefka as an alternate commander for that kind of shell, and it's a good meta buster for specifically T and K. So uh, honestly, I think we'll probably see double what we have here in terms of Kefka.
Yeah,
Atali is also like prominent too.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. There'll be a couple. There'll be a couple of Italians for sure.
At least one.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll at least have Big Bear.
What
Yeah.
Yeah. There'll be another one. So my sort of takeaway when I'm looking at this list, um, is like we were actually just talking about Grafdigger's Cage, and I had a crazy idea earlier today about playing a card that I never play, but gamble. Um, Thinking specifically if gambling for a Grafdigger's Cage or something like that is that worth it? And that's more of a like just a hypothetical question I asked myself driving. I've never done it, but I'm wondering like is there a stacks piece that is that impactful that's worth saying I need this to stick turn one or turn two? And if it does, I think that'll be good enough for me over the course of the game. So just a wondering because Timnachrom, Roxai, TNT, Sisay, Rogthras, Kinnan, and Timnadargo, basically your top 10 decks all are impacted by a spell like that.
Yeah. I think I'd rather play engineer.
Yeah, but I like engineer. The problem is it just feels like it's always too slow. So
Unfortunately.
that's my take. Every time I play it, I'm like, I want this card to be a staple in this deck. Like the floor is get Lifecraft Engine,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
it's always too
every time I
slow.
see that card as well, like I'm always like, oh, this is great. I get to go get the thing. And yeah, it's always
Yeah.
either it does what it's supposed to do and then you just like run away with the game because there's no interaction, or you have it removed immediately and then your thing's stuck in your graveyard and you're just like, well, that was fun. This
Yep.
game's
Yeah,
over.
and maybe there's an argument to play it in a meta where you expect there to be a lot of interaction, which would allow you to get to a turn four. But who knows? It's something worth thinking about. But I think we
With
agree in
the
this.
decks that are in the format right now, like outside of Sisay and Rogthras and Timnathras, like specifically creature removal is not super duper strong.
Yep.
Mhm.
Agreed.
Agreed.
And not only is
Um,
it not strong, it's not prioritized just at all.
right,
Absolutely. Right. You want bounce effects. You
Yeah.
don't really want removal.
right. So
Yeah.
you're very much only going to see things that are swords to plowshares or deadly relic type staple effects that are just so good that you can't cut them.
Yeah, but even the blue farms aren't on Deadly Republic. They probably just got swords in terms of like instant speed removal if they're not playing Fire Covenant.
Yeah.
Um, like my Magda or my clock is always getting bounced. It's seldom that it's like just getting killed.
Yeah.
So that's just something else to think about because, like, I'll give you an example of like I know we've got the considering list, but you like Imperial Recruiter is a great example. If you cast that card and you get one more turn, you're probably winning that game. But that's a big what if. So
Yep.
just those are the type of things I'm thinking about. Same with Goblin Engineer. If I go, I stick Goblin Engineer, I get Lifecraft Engine, and then I get to get another turn. like, yeah, I'm probably winning that game. But is there another card that would have been
It's the problem with
just as
Goblin
good?
Engineer is it's too slow when you're doing your normal game plan of
Hmm.
turn 1 Dwarf, turn 2 Magda, turn 3 do the thing. You now have to go either turn 1 you need the mana for a engineer so that you can do turn 2 Dwarf, hope that you have something that can be traded for the thing that you need,
Yep.
or you need to wait
Yeah.
until turn 3 with Magda, and then you've already used your mana. You need to
Yep.
make treasures, and then you're still off the ability to potentially trade the thing for the
Yep.
thing.
It's
So it's
awkward.
just
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
awkward. It doesn't go along with what we normally want to be doing
Yep.
Yep.
on curve.
Nope, I agree with you. It's specifically the play pattern is the problem. It's slow, but it's the way in which you have to play because you're
Mhm.
not going dwarf, goblin engineer, then Magda, because like you're just not going to play like that unless you're just so worried about bowmaster that you won't. Well, then you won't have the artifact to even trade with it. So yeah, you kind of
Exactly. You still have
yeah
to go
yeah
dwarf Magda, goblin engineer, and then hope that you see a turn 4.
Yeah,
exactly
and that's
yeah.
not fast enough for any stacks piece.
Nope. Yeah, I completely agree.
Um,
It was cute when you could do goblin engineer, curse mirror,
It's
and then
even
like
when that was
you
like the
know.
thing, you needed so many resources for that, and I never thought that it was like the thing that you should be doing with that.
No, no, I
yeah,
agree. You were playing like Null Rod and like other bad stacks effects, but it allowed you to play the engineer curse mirror style plan. But now it's just a value piece that's too slow. That's my take on it.
So let's look at the EDH top 16 stuff.
yeah, we'll just go over it quickly. It's a lot more marginalized out. Like there's a lot more fan favorite decks that hey Magda, that is not going to show up outside of like one or two people, likely just one.
Well, can you go back real quick?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think you'll see. You will. I don't know if there'll be a VV.
You might
You're
see
gonna see.
one.
Yeah,
Honestly,
maybe
I
one.
don't like. I think VV is overrated, especially for CEDH
yep, I
specifically.
agree.
I think Kefka's better. Yeah,
Kefka is insane.
yeah.
Um,
So
You
you'll see all those decks right there
minus
for sure.
VV. I don't think anyone's going to play
Yeah.
VV. I looked at all of these people's decks, and the last three people that played VV did not make top 16 in small
Yeah.
tournaments.
Yeah.
They weren't doing well. They're not going to bring it. Not for the biggest tournament of the
Yeah.
there's
year.
also some top players that are not going to be entering the Invitational, um, because they would rather play in the Open because there's more money for on the line. Like I know,
I asked my buddies about that.
I know Ian's playing in the Open and
Yeah,
not in the Invitational.
you take 64 of the best players out of the open, you up the prize pool $5,000, and if you think you're that good, yeah, it's not the worst decision.
No, I
Right.
mean
I
he's
like
more likely to money that way.
yeah, I'm like I that's we didn't talk about expectations or anything, but my whole personal goal was just getting into the invitational.
Yeah,
I know what I'm up against, and I know Magda's at a disadvantage right now just because of the interaction that Blue Farm brings for the other top decks. Just inadvertently nerf us. So we're just gonna have to it's a little bit of luck, but I also think with a like Russ was saying earlier, with this sort of attacking the meta from a different angle than what other pilots might expect, then it might work out well. Which is why I sent that clip of Max's podcast because I played a pod with him in Richmond, and that was the pod where someone said, "Oh, there's a turbo deck in the pod," and I'm like, "Where's the turbo deck at?"
yeah,
So it's definitely going to be stacks, and if you're not aware of like the stacks cards that I'm going to be playing, it could really mess you up. But I think the best players know what to expect. They've looked at all the deck lists. Like my profile's not private.
yeah. There
So
were
They've
they
also
know what.
seen how
Yeah,
you play in previous tournaments. Like they
Yeah,
know
yeah,
that
yeah,
you
yeah,
played a stacks deck to win the 10K.
yeah.
yeah,
So like,
yeah,
yeah.
You're not an unknown quantity anymore. Um,
yeah.
we're probably gonna see one Marnius. I doubt we're gonna see Tivit. Bluntly, we might
No,
see
I don't
one.
know.
If you see Tivit, I'll be surprised.
Yeah,
You
there might be
from this
one
list,
dog Thras.
yeah, I think you'll see more raw like that. Those numbers are kind of low right now,
Uh-uh.
believe it or not.
Uh-uh. There's
You don't
only
think you're gonna?
3 successful Rawl players. Not that top players can't pick up Rawl and do well with it, but like
Huh.
you have Blake and you have one other guy that's doing really well with Rawl. Um, and I don't know which of them are actually qualified. And
That's
if
fair.
they're not
Fair.
qualified specifically because they're RAL 1 tricks at the moment, um, you're probably not going to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. I like that's this kind of goes back to the previous point we were just talking about. I think decks that are well suited, like you're obviously going to see blue farm pilots that do well, but Kinnan is going to do really well, and there's going to probably be some other version of a turbo deck that makes blue farm's life really difficult. That's going to do well too.
I think you'll actually see that Kinnan only has like there was very few Kinnan 1 tricks. There was maybe 3, right? Um everyone else was like a generalist. So I mean, I'm not even sure how many Kinnans you're going to see bluntly.
I think you're going to see like 5, just from
I think
well, I
that's
guess
the
Ian
upper.
was
I think
playing
that's
Kinnan,
like
but he's
the
not
upper
playing
end of what you should expect there.
Yeah, but I think that deck is a deck that's really well suited against blue farm. It's kind of what I mean by that.
Yeah.
Same with like some of these turbo decks. Like it happened last year. Like Rockside just ripped through. Because again, if you keep a hand where you're like, well, I think I can jam a win, but Rockside's just faster, and if all it takes is just a misstep here or there, and all of a sudden we're dead. Turn 2 Nas or
You
Necro.
want to look at his considering before we go through these cards, or do we want to?
I'm not sure what order I want to do. This was kind of a late addition. Um.
We can do it like as a final thing then if you want.
Yeah. Fuck it. We'll do it live. All right. All right. Yeah. Cool. So we're gonna talk about the cards that like we wanted to talk about based on the last last update. So I'm gonna skip the ones we've talked about. Everything but Micus and Flatus and Chalice, really. So let's start with Chalice. Obviously, Chalice seems pretty strong right now. Probably belongs more on the flex side of things than why are you playing this? I mean, blue
You
farms.
could replace Chalice with Karn because
Fair.
Mycosynth Lattice is, it
Yeah.
has to go with Karn.
Yeah, it's a 2-card combo that you're
That is
playing
a
together.
fair point.
And I will say I put Chalice on the same axis as Vexing Bauble. Different, but seat order is king. If you're in turn 1 or seat 1, seat 2, and you have either of those spells in your hand, you feel really good about them.
Okay, so why Karnlock is I guess the question of the day then.
Yeah, so specifically thinking about the way decks are going to win. If you can stick, like, again, a lot of blue farm. Blue farm's not on a lot of creatures. If you can stick a turn 3 Karn, blue farm's not winning it. Oh, well, again, with the exception of Thassa and Democon, I'm just going to put that out there, which I've got my own thoughts about. They're going to really struggle to win the game if that resolves, and they're going to also struggle to remove it. Which I'm again just thinking out loud. If there's a world where I can go Dwarf, Magda, Karn, and there isn't a ton of pressure to like worry about Karn dying on the next turn, if I can then get to 5 treasures after that, and of course I've only ever done the lock once, but if there's a world where that lock does exist, it would feel really good. So the reason I picked Karn was
Sorry.
yeah, you're good.
Continue.
Oh, it's specifically around denying mana and denying resources. That would be the reason I'm playing it as a top end stacks piece.
All right.
So I think the most important part of Karn is the ability to remove the 0 mana rocks from your opponent by making them into creatures.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But also just turning off all their like blue farm. Have you ever seen blue farm win where it didn't have a bunch of rocks out?
Not
Like
really.
No.
Unless they just like turn 3 natty decon or something.
Yeah. Which again, when you're playing with other of those other decks in the pod, you're hoping they at least have interaction to stop that, but they probably would have interacted with their card anyways. So who knows?
Yeah, they hate losing, not winning a lot more than they hate losing sometimes. So, a couple of things here. You're like, yes, it's really good against blue farm. You're 100% correct that, in a vacuum, you are looking at telling them they can't play the game or they're playing like a third of a game. That's real. 25%, but probably closer to 30, are going to have a 4/4 in flyer with haste in the command zone.
Mhm.
That feels like it cuts against the. I mean, they don't have a lot of creatures. Yes, they don't have a lot of creatures, but their singular goal in life, once you get that, is just to use the ninth card in their hand that they only, break glass
Yeah.
in case of Karn, and
Yeah.
there's going to be one in every single pod of the tournament.
Well, hear me out on this. Remove the rocks. Like, let's think of the turn 3, turn 4 play when you're going to slam the Karn. Show me a blue farm board state, with the exception of, again, of, you know, let's just say there's a turn 3 card on the board, because that's a very real world where that card gets played.
Okay.
Dwarf Magda, turn 3 card. Without the access to rocks, how is blue farm casting Crom?
Fair enough.
You're
Slowly.
you're right.
Slowly.
Also, when you play Karn, it's at 5, and then you uptick it, like Show's saying. I'm always eating a Chrome Mox or like
That's fair.
something like that, right? So then it's at 6. Now, like, it's going to get attacked for a turn, most likely. It just becomes like, can it survive a turn? If you get the one more turn and you get to the 5 treasures and there isn't a board state, if there is a board state, you probably are grabbing Portal, which is how I got the Karn lock eventually. Was you went Dwarf Magda, Karn, get to 5, Portal, so it doesn't die. Then make more treasures, get Mycosynth if you're live, and then the game they just scoop. But you're never doing it to get Mycosynth Lattice. In fact, the reason you actually might keep Mycosynth Lattice, with the exception of doing the Karn lock, is the ability to quote unquote get the artifact dwarf with the Graph Digger's Cage out, because I don't have the Battered Golem combo in the deck. So that's the other thing to think about.
You have enough other ways to do that I don't think the lattice is necessary for that.
Yep.
Yeah, that's fine. No, it's definitely possible. Like, it's easily one of the first 5 cards out of the deck. But I'm looking at it as a
I think Karn by himself without lattice is still a
Yeah.
yeah,
for this
yeah,
meta specifically.
yeah. I can totally see that. It's definitely like it could come out right now and I wouldn't think anything of it. But I think Karn might be just again a super top end stacks piece that could be really really impactful. It stops Kinnan, stops a lot of other strategies.
Mm-hmm.
So just something to think about, but it can come out. Not something that I'm like married to.
All right. So
Okay.
let's.
Mox Diamond was missing before, it's in the deck now. So
Yeah, it is in.
Missed the edit.
we already talked about
Yep.
Gemstone a little bit, but
Mhm.
to me, having access to mana early and knowing that if Magda is removed early, you're likely going to be able to recast it is more important than having that extra card in your hand.
Yep.
Sorry,
Especially when it's
which one?
Gemstone Caverns.
Gemstone Caverns.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
And specifically when you're on more of these 3 and 4 mana things that are powerful, like Karn or Knuckles or whatever. Let's look at Gimli, right? Being able to do turn 1 Magda, turn 2 Gimli, or turn 1 double dwarf, turn 2 Magda, etc. Like, there's a lot more hands that are viable because Caverns exists. And it can also save you in situations where you don't have those red sources.
Yeah, that's totally fair. But so I want to challenge you to think of the play pattern a little bit differently. So if we like, I always evaluate cards on an on curve basis. So if I like, this is just a normal turn 3 game, not crazy, which is why I was super high on Knuckles. Dwarf, Magda, Knuckles. You don't need extra interaction. You got the treasure off the turn 2 dwarf attacking. And then you just play Knuckles 3 lands and that one treasure, and you're cooking. That's activation right there. Sometimes. I don't think it's in our best interest to be playing cards that puts our hand down, because God forbid you had to mulligan low, which is why like it's easily the thing I'm the least risk adverse is like going down on mulligans. Um, because the more cards you have in your hand, the better off you are. And I know that's an obvious statement, but I don't know that playing the Gemstone Cavern on turn 1 to play a turn 1 Magda is that much better than playing turn 1 Dwarf, turn 2 Magda. In fact, it just isn't in terms of a treasure generating
It's way
standpoint.
better than Mox Diamond because at least you get to pitch whatever the fuck you want,
Yes.
whether it's
That's
a
fair.
land or not.
Yeah, that's fair.
And
That's
that's
fair.
also in the mid game comes down as a colorless land that at least helps you recast Magda,
Yep.
whereas Mox Diamond does not. So like
Yep.
if you're going to be playing Mox Diamond, Gemstone Caverns is just a better Mox Diamond.
Yeah. The only differentiating factor is one, it's a land. So
Yeah.
if you flood on lands, it's not great, I guess. But at that point you're okay with mana, and the going over the top with clock activations, like you can't do that.
I'll tell you guys this. I'm not taking credit for this at all. I think it was Critical EDH. I can't remember exactly what the channel was, but one of their players tracked games where they played a Gemstone Cavern and their win rate. It was abysmal, and that's Blue Farm. Like not good at all. And for us, I would argue it's even worse. I can't remember winning a game because I had Gemstone out. Certainly not because of it, but even having it
Last
out,
3
pitching
games
my
that I
hand.
played with Gemstone, I won.
I hear you. I'm just telling you that I think
Like if we're going to be talking about like, positive confirmation bias, which you have with Great Train Heist and all that stuff.
well,
Definitely Gemstone Caverns is there for me.
that player specifically, and again, this is Blue Farm that draws a ton of cards. That
Right.
player had dozens of games tracked where his rate was like low, low, low.
And
I just think I like playing on curve. I don't like pitching cards, and that's just my general stance on it. I will go Dwarf, Magda, and then play my top end piece on turn 3 and be so happy. Any
fair.
of my 4 mana spells.
I mean, Rust was very against this card for a while. And even he has come around to it.
Yep.
Especially like if you're in seat 3, seat 4, sometimes being able to just be like, "Hey, you have to worry about the Rogsai in seat 2, but then I get to jam." So now everyone has to play fucking safe.
You know
So
why? Like I haven't thought about this out loud, but now that we're talking about it, I think the reason why I have never overvalued uh, early mana acceleration is that when it would be relevant would be turn our 3 mana spells because you want to play a turn
Mhm.
3 on turn 2. With the exception of Blood Moon, I there's not many 3 mana spells in this deck that I'm like super high on at really at all. PFB is better on after the fact when you've got creatures on board. Um, I so I think the play pattern of Dwarf, Magda, make a treasure, turn 3, you've got access to 4 mana, which gives you your best spells, the One Ring, things like that. I just don't think it's that important to have that extra mana to go down cards on. And that's just something to think about because, like, again, our 3 mana that you're playing on turn 2 is not that big of a deal usually.
Right.
But that's it. I think go like with the
But like
exception of playing Sax
the point
Pieces.
of this is like Rust is saying in chat, because he can't talk because he's at work, is he's playing the things like Gemstone Caverns or Simian Spirit Guide or Lotus Petal, is because you either A want to play more 1-drops or you want to B ramp into your 4-drop quicker without having to rely on using your treasures to do so.
Yeah, but so here's going to be a take, and this is something that I also just agree on, is the hotter and faster you come out, the more likely you are to press somebody at the table to interact with you. And I don't want to be making it hot, so to say, that early. Like again, I like when I played my game, I'm like, look, I played I played it. Guess what, guys? Mountain Dwarf pass. Oh, I'm gonna play Magda on curve pass. And then turn 3, I'm asking some questions. But I don't want to like there've been plenty of games where I go dwarf, like a one drop, and then Magda, and it's super powerful. But you also just get all the attention at the table immediately. And then you've got players like kind of smelling blood going, all right, we got to answer this. We're going to lose. Um, so that's just
Sure.
something to think about too.
But like the other side of that is almost all of our most important things are creatures. So unless they specifically have Force of Will or Pact of Negation, because most people are not playing Strict Serenade, that you are now playing on an access where they specifically need creature removal, and if they're not running more than 5 pieces, like you're Gucci. And being completely honest, half the time that my Magda is bounced, it is a benefit to me because it then helps me protect my win after I play it again. And if they're bouncing my Magda and they don't have Force of Will in hand, I'm winning that game.
Yeah, that's definitely a thing. It's just I think this is where if you're playing stacks, you're playing this style of gameplay where it is, you know, dwarf, early piece of stacks interaction, and then play the
But
game, but
to your
not
own
make it.
words, to your own words, you said that that's not your game plan every time. So like
It
you want to
depends. It
be able
depends.
to be flexible, right?
Sure.
And regardless of the variant of the deck that you're playing, Magda is capable of these sort of go fast scenarios.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to take credit for it, but I think I was one of the first people to like preach from the mountaintop City of Traders for that exact reason
You
of
were.
like the ability to be able to get that quick fast mana. Like there's times where you need to be able to do that. I completely agree with you, but I don't want to go down cards is what I'm saying. Like if I have a hand that is like City of Traders as an example, Mountain City of Traders, I'm so okay with playing that because this
Right.
deck really can operate with two mana. So you go Mountain City of Traders, you have 3 mana. The next turn you float 2, you play your land, you have 4, and then like you're just fine. But I don't want card disadvantage, and I think like if players really like reflect on their experiences when they play cards that force them to go down spells or cards in hand, they're gonna realize it's not as good as like the what they think. And I would challenge people to think about just playing on curve more. Again, all pod dependent.
Right.
Be the
But
first person to say that.
I would also argue that if you're in a situation where you're like, I can function on low amounts of mana, and you're playing against stronger opponents, they
Mhm.
will realize this player is weak if I remove Magda there, and I
Sure,
don't
sure.
necessarily need them in the game to stop my opponents.
Yeah, but like, oh,
And
so when you're
realistically, most of the time, our answers that stop our opponents also stop them, and it's more likely to stop them from winning or prevent them from being able to, get a get the game into a state where they can actually win with us in the pod participating more often than not.
sure, but
Because
like,
we have
okay,
access to those God Pharaoh statue and all that stuff if you're playing them. And that's also one of
yeah,
the reasons why, Rust cut those cards is because he felt like you realistically don't want to be forced to play police.
no, there's no world where I want to play police. I I would challenge you to think about a play pattern that I was describing, where you would go Dwarf Magda, and then you've got turn 3 where you're kind of your whole deck's at your disposal of all the cards, basically. Think about your opponents, and are they looking at Magda going, I have to interact with Magda here? Probably not. Again, unless you've presented a board state that is really scary or says I win, players are likely going to hold their interaction until they have to use it, especially the best pilots, because they want to save that for either a must answer or protect their win con. So I again, I don't like dumping
Sure,
my
but if
whole
you want to
hand.
if you want to go down this theory craft hole of, the best players are going to do X, right? The best players are going to know that we're going to particularly be looking for 10 treasures and not just leverage 5. Because if we know that our opponents have interaction, we know that they're looking to interact with us, we can't win with 5 in most situations unless you're already a threat because you've played an artifact dwarf.
For sure, but I think they're at that point, they're not worried about losing to 5. They're worried about a god. Like the number one piece of stacks that blue farm players hate is God's Pharaoh statue. Like
Same thing with
there's
Rogstar
times
because they
where
can't win.
yeah. Yeah, there's times where my opponents are like, yeah, but you can get a God's Pharaoh here. And I'm like, I don't want like why would I get God's Pharaoh here? Like I don't want that card. They're so worried about it that they're not thinking, oh crap, Magda can win here. They're thinking, oh, I will never be able to win, so then I have to do something. Um, but again, it's just I think that's the stacks mindset versus a more turbo or maybe even mid-rangey interactive style of Magda. I just don't feel the need to get a lot of stuff out. And I'll give you an example. If I did need to get something out, that's why Workshop was a card I basically always played. Um, because there's a world where I will mulligan and look for a stacks piece with a Workshop, and I might slam it on turn one. Like I've slammed turn one's Sphere of Resistance before off of an Ancient Tomb. That it was a seat four game actually where I played that because there was a Roxai in the pod. I ended up winning that game. It took a lot of turns, but going Ancient Tomb Sphere of Resistance feels really bad. But again, you make mana difficult to come by. Players can't put string wins together or combos together to win.
Yeah.
That can be something that benefits you. So that's all I'm saying. I am going to look to play that style of not dump my hand, play on curve, expect my opponents to play not only correct but have respect for their opponents. And I think when they look at my board state, and again, this goes back to that. I think I mentioned the Sam Black article of players think, oh, it's Magda. I can count the treasures. Well, I'm not there yet, guys. I got one treasure. I got two creatures on board. Right? We can all count to three. So, of course, someone will be cheeky and say bottle cap blast or this or that. Well, there's been times where I'll show my hand if I'm so worried about somebody like interacting with me when they shouldn't,
Yeah.
and I'm like, look, I'll show you my hand, but you're pitching the game if you interact here. And again, I think most players are going to be receptive to that logic because they
Free
know how
information.
Magda wins.
Yeah.
They know how Magda wins too. I'm not always showing my hand, but if I have to, I will.
Right.
So go ahead, buddy.
Go ahead. No, I was going to say there's one card in particular that I want to talk about more in the missing pieces than the other ones. And that is Maskwood Nexus.
Yeah.
So specifically because Go-Go exists in the deck, the safest lines with Go-Go all include Maskwood Nexus.
Yeah, to me, Maskwood Nexus. While again, I've always been on this combo more than I haven't been.
Well, I'm not even talking about needing to play Battered Golem. I'm just talking about the fact that Maskwood Nexus enables things and other lines that don't involve Clock of Omens, whether that involves Battered Golem or not. Is something that is like very difficult to just throw away. Because at that point, Go-Go then becomes, I need 5 treasures already before Go-Go comes down for me to actually like win off of this.
I don't know that I look at
Versus
it that
you.
again. I think again my play pattern is just Dwarf Magda play Go-Go, right? Like I'm still getting an activation there, which can either be a portal, a God's Pharaoh, or you sit on it and wait, and you get your piece to help you win the game at that point. But playing Masswood Nexus, I don't think that's like I'm never upset playing it, but I don't ever want to be playing that just to play it. I would always like we were the hypothetical of like the turn 3 Karn. I would always prefer to play Karn over just cast a Masswood Nexus.
I don't
Now, what
disagree
I would
there.
say is, but what I would say is outside of this event, that the combo will go back into the deck. But like we went through all of those decks, I don't know that I expect to see a Blind Obedience at the table or something like that. That would all the Kinnan lists are off of it.
For the most
So
part,
yeah, so I'm just hedging, or I guess I'm just looking at the numbers and saying, well, I don't think that I'll need to get through that. And if for some reason somebody gets me, well, then I'm going to try to grind the game to a draw and take my point and say, I got.
But like you said, we're not
but
even talking about Gollum as the backup here. We're talking about making a very accessible secondary line without clock better.
because
I
you're
don't know
going
that
to
it's
need
that good.
roaming throne. Period.
I just don't think I don't think it's that good of
if roaming throne is if roaming throne is not accessible to you and you don't have Battered Golem or Maskwood Nexus, how do you win with clock?
Sorry, what do you mean by that?
If you do not have
What's the
Battered
scenario?
Golem, if you do not, let's say, in your graveyard, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't have any mana. Battered Golem is not in your deck. Maskwood Nexus is not in your deck. Roaming Throne has been Swords to Plowshared.
Okay.
Right? How are you winning with Clock of Omens?
So I have Clock of Omens and Magda on the battlefield, right?
Mm-hmm.
and I would imagine an artifact dwarf.
Yep.
So that's infinite tapped treasures.
So if you need to win at instant speed, how are you winning?
Well, fair. That's that's the specific situation we're describing here. I mean, that's I think a super niche situation where they're going to hit roaming throne with swords, with
Or it's
again
stuck in your
an
hand, or
exile.
it's in your graveyard,
Or it got
and you don't have
Ragaband.
access. Yeah, like
Yeah, it's definitely possible that something like that happens.
So
I think it's more likely that it doesn't happen than it does.
that's probably true. I mean, probably true that roaming throne is going to be the interaction point. They're gonna kill it. They're not gonna. It's gonna get forced, right? That's
I
what's
think they
gonna happen.
actually kill the. I think the bark form harvester becomes the interactive point, not the roaming throne. The ward cost on the like that's actually kind of what I was trying to figure out. Because if you're saying I have infinite tap treasures, I have all my stacks pieces on the battlefield. I get my stacks pieces before I get my roaming throne, and then I get my roaming throne. And anytime I grab roaming throne, the table's not interacting with it. So that's why I was like a little confused because that play pattern doesn't typically happen, and because of the density of artifact dwarves I have, also while having Mycas Nymphlatus technically in the deck,
Yeah.
like I would be able to generate infinite tap treasures always. Um,
Um,
and again, like there's a world where it could happen, but I don't see it happening with infinite tap treasures and grabbing all my stacks
so
pieces.
I do want to bring something up that we haven't really touched on, and this is not a slight towards any given person in or people generally. I think
Mhm.
it's pretty easy to say that based on the caliber of player and the existence of the Yap meta, that many rounds going to time because players have we woven a very tangled web of stack interaction, yapping, and more yapping um, is pretty likely. So I more than most tournaments where you can just utilize in Swiss like the average players
stupidity,
um
to put it bluntly.
right, yeah, just inexperience or mistakes
Mhm.
to just like
Just
get
stacks out the board and get to your next turn.
right. I
Yep.
think you are more likely to see people that are going to be I'm going to say abusing. That's again not a very nice word, but like abusing tournament process to uh time out the table and force a draw on a spot where they think they can't win, or make their turn the last turn. You know what I mean? Um,
That's fair.
that's more likely going to happen here in the invitational than it's going to happen in the open, because more people are going to make bad mistakes in the open and just lose the
See,
game to someone.
I this is maybe it's just a gut feeling. I could be completely wrong here. I think games are going to go faster than they will go long. That is just my honest thought
Have
here.
you watched any of the coverage of when there's 4 strong players in a pod that has like blue farm, Rogthras? Like those games go on.
Oh sure, oh sure.
That's your meta.
Yeah, but
Not only the meta, the
I hear
players.
you.
But that's the meta
Well,
and the players that you're going to be playing against.
yeah, and
Is
you
the
know
thing.
this is something worth maybe at the end, like when we're doing closing segment, is like what do you think the cut is to make top 16? That it's something I've thought about because anytime I go into an event, and this is obviously a seven round event, which is much longer than
Is it a
your average
7 round
event.
64 man? Because that's weird.
Yeah, I'm like pretty sure, but we can real time fact check me. Um, I'll pull it up.
Okay.
But yeah, I believe it's 7 rounds and 64 players. Um, I my thought process going into any tournament is that I call it 2 wins and change. I need to win 2 games and have some amount of draws, and I will make the top cut.
Right.
That is generally true. So again, it's burned me before. When I played at the Boyle 2, I finished 2-1 and 4 draws. And I finished 25th and it cost me. Um, but I'm okay with that going like my goal for any tournament is to make it to the last round with the ability of making it into top 16.
Sure.
You can't win all of them, right? But if I had a shot going into the last round, I feel really good about that.
Right.
So that's just something to think about. I don't know the answer. I don't know what the number is going to be for the cut, but I imagine 3 wins and some change is going to be enough.
That's probably true, but also I think that the vast majority of the players that you're going to be interacting with are going to be much better at making a draw happen when it shouldn't and not letting a draw happen when it should, as it were. Um, but that's largely going to, if they think they can win, they're gonna win, and if they think
For
they
sure.
have to draw, they are going to sit in the tank, right?
Yeah, but I think you're because players are better, they know like you're gonna like if I think somebody's slow playing or talking too much, just call for a judge. Hey judge, I just I asked twice for a game action. Like that's it. And once player like that's the difference when you're playing at pro REL is that there's like ramifications to doing things like not taking game actions.
Quick question:
Whereas,
is this at Pro
yeah,
REL, not comp?
it's at pro REL and it is
Okay,
7 rounds.
that's important.
7 rounds cut to top 16.
That's important.
So
I like.
I'm telling you, I think the games are going to be tight. I think I think it's going to move quick versus slow. I think players are going to jam win attempts, and I don't expect there to be a million draws.
I
There's going to be
I
some
I
amount, but I
think
think there's going to be a lot more wins than.
I think you're going to experience some very clear cultural clash between how everyone has been playing. I'm gonna say like comp REL, but like a little bit looser than that, um,
Mhm.
and what we expect out of 60 card Pro REL gameplay. I think you're not gonna even get
Mhm.
close to that mark, and that's still gonna lend you towards the longer end of the spectrum in terms of game actions and slow play because we have a
Yeah,
culture of people not engaging. I'm gonna say people maliciously abusing process to force
Mhm.
straws or to get way more time in the tank than they should ever be allotted, even in comp REL. That's just my position, and I think that it's going to take a cultural shift that has not happened yet for that to.
yeah. So
God,
well to your point, Drew. I'll say I think you're right. That could happen. I think players, especially higher quality players will be more likely if they know something's up, they will feel more comfortable and more empowered to call judges. And I think judges, because of the higher expectation, will be more likely to like act. Whereas, in some of these other events, it can be kind of like a very laissez-faire kind of approach to how they're going to handle quote unquote slow play.
yeah,
So I think
There's
players are going to
also
take
a
game
lot of
actions.
situations in CDH where like this one decision makes or breaks the entire game. And like
Yeah,
a lot of players are not going to want to rush someone in that situation where they're like, we know that them making this one decision makes or breaks the
yeah.
game.
yep,
No, talking will happen. I
yep.
completely agree with that. I don't think that someone's going to be able to abuse talking to force draws is kind of where I'm saying. And what I will say kind of on that point is I actually think that my style of gameplay lends itself really well to rounds that go long. Like I am a-okay. Like my biggest concern is losing turn two. Like if you were to say, "Hey, you're gonna have to play every game. It's gonna go the full 80 minutes every single round," I'm okay with that.
Okay,
I've got no problem. I don't get like I don't I, like it doesn't bother me. I would prefer that over the like really really quick turn two, turn three games. So I think
Sure.
that'll be fine,
I
and I
think
think
that if
our
that
deck
is
is
your
suited well to go long.
I think if that is your preferred play style though, that like getting rid of Battered Golem, Maskwood Nexus like is a huge risk.
Yeah, it's just for this event. Like I said, it will be right back in the deck as soon as it comes out because you basically need it. It's just a calculated risk that I think I can still win without it in the deck based off of the answers I think that my opponents are going to have.
So you think you're going to get
So
an
with
extra turn every single time you need one?
No, no, I think the deck can win at instant speed 90% of the time.
That's probably true.
Yeah, I like you're going to get got, and when you get got, it's going to feel awful. Like it just is what it is. But at the same time, like I don't know that it's 3 cards. Like Dwarven Bloodboiler, 3 pips. We already talked about how tough the red is. Batter Golem is, sorry for lack of better
with
words,
us
ass. The card
with
sucks.
us talking about specifically Knuckles, um, even though Knuckles is colorless mana for 2 of its pips, like I am more than comfortable playing a Blood Boiler and getting a tap outlet for an extra red pip, because my mana base is red enough to the point where paying 1 red that I'm going to get the treasure back immediately for, just to
Feels
set up
okay.
my board,
Yeah.
feels fine, especially if I have like Horde Master in play or something.
Look, I'm not saying Blood Boiler is a bad card. I'm just saying it can tax your mana base, and I don't want to use treasures if I don't really have to. I'm saying like I don't like Battered Golem, and I don't think Masswood Nexus at 4 mana is a card you want to be casting. It's never a bad card to be casting, but like you're not keeping your hand going, oh, I got Masswood in my hand. I
No,
just don't think
I,
that's
I
That's
agree
totally fair.
there, but also um, it turns all your vehicles into dwarves,
yeah,
which yes,
yeah.
we already have Lifecraft Engine, but the other thing is like it's a point of contention for your opponents because you're like, yeah, this is a combo piece. I don't have like a tap outlet already. All this is here for is to make me potentially 2/2s, once a turn cycle after this.
I don't know. I don't know that experienced players are going to buy that. Is the problem? They're going to see, oh, this is the combo. He's got a piece in hand. If he gets to 5, he can win the game, and we can't interact with it. The last time I hard casted this card in a tournament, it got Force of Willed.
Oh, it gets countered
Yeah,
probably
yeah,
80% of the time that I play this card.
Yep.
yeah. Like whereas like I don't know that a One Ring's ever been countered that I've cast,
Yeah.
and I'd rather just cast One Ring.
Kind of
I
agree
have
there.
vehicle countered very often as well.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm just that's all I'm saying is it's a 3 card combo that you only need it when you really need it, and I'm just hedging my bets that in this event I don't think I'll need it. And again, that could be just a mistake. But it's
So
3 more cards that I can run that are not 3 and 4 CMC.
with like 40% of your meta, having ETBs be very important to their deck,
Yep.
whether it's Sisay, whether it's um Atali, whether it's Thoracle. Why are you comfortable taking out Torpor Orb?
Yeah, I know this is another point of contention. So I'll give you the 2 examples. Well, with the exception of Bowmaster, that's just the initial ETB. Um, Atali and Thassa. My stance as a Magda pilot is that it's not my responsibility to answer those cards. And this is going to sound bad, but it's something to consider. When you are playing Magda, there was a thread in the chat not that long ago where I think it was Fluffy went and got Torpor Orb in response to Thassa being cast. I think that was a mistake. Obviously, I don't have all the details, but there should not be a world in which you have 5 treasures, you have not conveyed to your opponent that Torpor Orb is a card, and that they've basically pulled their pants down casting Thassa. Um, and they have nothing that they can do about that. Because in that situation where, the Magda pilot could go, you're gonna hard cast that when I have the ability to go get Torpor Orb or something like that, depending on how you word your words. I don't think a blue farm player is doing that. And I don't want to spend my activation ever getting Torpor Orb. Now it's always, well, not always, but it's been in my list more times than not. But I don't think it's my responsibility to answer Thassa. I'm worried about answering Breach because we can't answer everything. And Atali, I hate that deck. I've lost to it a ton. But I also don't think that Magda should be the one answering Atali. Um, like that's just my stance on it.
Counterpoint. Thoracle Decon is way easier to actually put together than Breach. Breach is a
Oh,
3 to
for
4
sure.
card combo depending on the situation. And as something in your opening hand, Torpor Orb in this tournament is going to change how people have to play.
Yeah, but let me tell you this: like the thing about learning Blue Farm is that you learn that Blue Farm is a breach deck. It has Thassa Decon as a thing it can do, but it is a breach deck through and through. It's way more consistent. The deck, like the entire deck's built around it. Thassa is just there because it's the cleanest A/B combo in
Sure.
the game. But it is
The,
a
the
breach
other
deck. Like that's
important
just the way
thing
to
is
look at it.
like if you do not have the answer and you just go all I can do is put this little bit of information of I could be running Torpor Orb. All
Yep.
it takes is one person in an event like this, where people are going to talk about the Magda player not playing Torpor Orb when they tried
Yeah.
to bluff that they could do it, to just completely fuck you.
Well, no, no, no. And I'm not saying I would do that. What I'm trying to say is that I don't think a blue farm player is going to put everything out there with Magda having the ability to get a known stacks piece that it has. That's what I'm saying. Like, I just don't see that world happening. And I think the player that did do it probably either hadn't considered that,
They will.
or just made a
I,
mistake.
I don't think that it is necessarily incorrect for them to force you to go get Torpor Orb, because then it also makes it so that the opponents no longer have the ability to win with Oracle.
Right.
Yeah, that's
So,
also
and
definitely
then
possible.
they're also going to be under this situation of, if I don't make this person use these treasures to answer me, I am losing anyway. So I might as well just jam. And
Yeah.
like, that is the most common thing that like I talk about with players that play Thoracle and their decks, where I do this thing where I'm like, I have Torpor Orb in my deck, and they literally just go, I need to make you use those treasures. I'm playing Thoracle. And the opponents at the table will then, with you having 5 treasures, unless you specifically are going to go, I don't have Torpor Orb in my deck. No one's force of willing that Thoracle if you have 5 treasures there.
Yep.
No one.
For sure, and for sure. So that's the way to think about it. And like the Richmond event was the last big one I played in, and I did have Torpor Orb in the deck, and I did have to go get Torpor Orb, but it was the last turn of the game. Opponent was like, "Screw it, I'm just going to jam," and I was able to answer it. So like Torpor Orb's on the list of considerings. It's something I'm certainly going to think about. I'm ambivalent because I don't want to answer Thassa. There's any world where we're the one answering Thassa, we're not winning that game.
If there's any
We're
world
just
where
not.
we're answering a majority of the problems defensively, we're not winning them.
Yeah,
So
but
like
then there's
that
but then
can be
there's
extrapolated to most things, unfortunately.
yeah,
So like
but think about this world where they're casting Thassa and again, mana is usually always really tight with blue farm. If they're casting Thassa, the chances that they have, depending what mana they've got left, there's also a world where you just go get God's Pharaoh statue and they can't cast the Tainted Pact on top of that for 4 mana. Like
uh
there's other things that you can do.
sure. But if you activate in response to them casting Thassa, and they
Hmm.
think that you might go get a Torpor Orb, not a Torpor, God Pharaoh statue instead, they're just going to cast the thing on top of you and exile their deck and pray.
See, I don't think they're going to do that.
I've
That
had
I disagree
I've
with.
had 3 or 4 people do that in games that I've played.
Yeah, homie. I think you misunderstand. You're talking about Rogsai with a card engine. Like they are full send.
For sure, but we have other like the meta is decks that can interact. So it's just something to think about, like what the play patterns are going to emerge, and, like what the main win cons are going to be. Do I think other like the thing that sucks the most when you're playing in these pods where there's like Rockside is the only quote unquote blue deck, and there isn't a blue farm to police the table. The math suggests that every pod is going to have a blue farm player. So like I expect there to be some level of interaction in every pod that I go into. And again, I don't want to be the one interacting. That's just my take on it. It could be greedy. Torpor Orb and Disruptor's Flute likely get added back as I've got 5 cards in front of me that I'm you know uh
Thinking about.
working through right now. Yeah, but that's just it. Don't get Torpor Orb to stop Thassa. Find some other way to get around that and be proactive in your
Yeah,
yapping. Talk more.
unless you need to and there's no other choice, obviously you don't have thing.
Yeah,
Like that's just
here's another
what the
line.
deck.
Here's another line is yeah. If how about this? Like depending on where we're at with turns, if you get Thassa and force me to grab Torpor Orb, I now no longer have the ability to interact with player X before my next turn. You're gonna go all out trying to win. I'm gonna answer you, and then this player is gonna win. I would rather us play for the point and not cast that Thassa. That player is probably not casting that Thassa right there. That's all I'm saying.
It really depends on the player.
Yeah.
It depends. It depends, but I think your smart players understand that, and they're not going to go the screw it. I'm going to go full send. They want to play for every single point they can get. And I think pitching a game because let's see that they've got it. Every Magda player plays Torp Orb. That's the reason why I can afford to sometimes cut it, because players know that we're on it. If it was a flex piece, it'd be a different story. But that's all I'm saying about that is be
I just
proactive in
think
your
that,
yapping.
like you said, you're thinking about putting it back in. I think that of the tournaments you're going to where you don't want to be caught with your pants down not having the thing that you need, this is probably
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. All I'm trying to say from this whole Torp War piece is be more proactive in your talking, just so that you don't get put in situations where you have to answer things like that. That's
Yeah.
all I'm saying. I'm
But,
not saying don't play
you
the
know,
card.
in a lot of these situations, it comes down to whether you stop them or not. Either they're losing to the next player in turn order, or they're losing to you because you didn't have to use your treasures defensively.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
like,
that's
to them,
fair.
it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. And that's realistically what the strongest players are going to be thinking.
Yeah, I think it depends. A couple of things it depends on, but like where you're at in the game. But if we're getting to a point where that's not early, or again, who knows? It's something to consider. I agree with your points. I'm just trying to say if you proactively are communicating to the table the things that you can get and the ramifications of getting those things, I think players will make better informed decisions. Not that they won't do it, but that they will at least think about it. Versus catching them with their pants down, they put a Thos on the stack, and now you get to blow them out just to lose to the next player in turn order.
Yep.
That's it.
Again, the wording is important because if you're saying I can get this and you're not on it, it causes issues.
No, you don't say that. You go, if you cast Thassi here and I have to grab a stacks piece to stop that, now no one can answer this next player. That's
People
it.
will prod as to what exactly you're going to get.
I'm telling you, it's never come up. Ever. I mean, I've been on it
It's
before,
come up for
and I've had to
me,
do it
but
once. Yeah, but you like again, you're talking about the best players in a tournament that they're not going to get caught off guard by these things. Like they
sure,
know
but
players have looked at
the
my list. They
players in
know
this
Torp Orb's in the list.
the players in this tournament are also going to be at least top 16 caliber of any event you've ever been in, starting from pod
Better,
one.
better than that.
Exactly. So
Yeah, I think these are top 4 players from every big event. That's how I'm evaluating it.
Probably.
Like you're not going to get away. You're not getting away with anything in this event. Like you got to play tight. You got to have a clear game plan. Like there isn't going to be any like catching somebody off guard with anything. Like that's why Magda struggles right now. Everyone knows what the deck does.
sure, but as Rust is saying in chat, like good players, they either don't respect Magda or they over respect Magda, and there's one or the other that's going to happen. And a majority of the time, the top players respect Magda enough, but not
Yeah.
enough to like actually respect you in the game.
Yeah, by the way that I will play my style, players are going to be more incentivized to interact or focus on my other opponents in the pod. That's all. That's all I can say about how I anticipate playing the game.
Well, that's
Now
probably
there could
how
be a
you're going to
world
be
where,
treated
for
in
sure,
general.
and I'm okay with
Yeah,
that.
that's good. That's
Like
a
yeah, the little dwarf that could.
yep. All
Let's
right.
move on to the next slide. I
Yep.
mean, Disruptor Flute, you already said you're looking to put back in, so I'm not gonna.
Yeah,
Belabor.
yeah, I understand why. I understand why flute's good. It's more of a like, what am I trying to answer? And that's I don't
Sure.
want to be the one answering Thrasios. I want to answer like the win cons.
Okay, so we've
I
talked.
think for
You got
yeah, we go ahead. I was gonna say like looking at these flex slot things, right? Like a card that I actually don't think is good in the meta that you're going into is Siege Smash.
Yeah, I agree.
Like
Yeah, I'm also. Yep.
there's not enough decks that are going to be playing Basalt shenanigans
Yep.
that it's going to be worthwhile. We already talked
Yeah.
about Magus and Blood Moon. We've talked about Mishra's Workshop a little bit, and I think that we're all in agreement that for the most part it's just a spell, even though it's on a land.
Yep.
Yeah.
But the one card here to really talk about, because we already talked about Agatha's Soul bit, is what are your thoughts on Ubamask in this meta?
Yep.
Because even though people are playing Blue Farm, more than half the lists that are playing Blue Farm are not on Reddit.
Yeah. It's a weird one for me. I love the idea of the card. Like love it. However, it is technically a do nothing. like when we go through this like hypothetical gameplay of turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, like you don't want to really be tutoring for that card. You play it on turn 3, it didn't do anything. You could be playing spells that either do stuff or win the game for you. So I don't know. I've only ever resolved that spell one time, and I could attribute winning the game to it. But I also had a Torpor Orb out, and a Nala was the deck that was trying to win. So the Rhystic Study they cast didn't do anything. So I don't know. I like the card, but I feel like I like the idea of the card more than the actual card itself. And 4 mana is like, it has to be either Karn level oppressive or One Ring, Go Knuckles level ceiling. Like
Fair enough.
that's kind of my thought there.
I would agree with that
Like
generally.
I'll give you a 4 mana artifact that I would consider playing over Ubermask right now, and it's Apple of Eden. And I'm not playing that card, but just
Glasses of
a
Urza
thought.
is way better than Apple of Eden.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
fetchable on
But just like
Saga.
yeah, but that's it. That's where I'm at with that. Like again, I like the idea of it, but I same with like Goblin Engineer. I like the card. I just don't know that it does enough or that it is impactful enough.
I probably agree with
Yeah,
that.
we've talked about Pyrokinesis. We've talked about Chalice.
Yeah,
Dead and Gone is just. I don't think there's really much to talk about as far as this particular meta goes,
Yeah,
outside of the Gone being able to bounce a blue creature so that you can give
yeah,
someone access to their blue card to pitch.
yep.
But
yeah. I like Dead and Gone. After the last time hearing Russ talk about it, I like really thought about it. The problem is my instant package is so tight that I don't think you could show me an instant spell, with the exception of Crate Train Heist, that you would say that spell's better than this spell. And I'm
Right.
sure Russ, if you have thoughts, you can say your piece. But I think it's good, but I just don't play a high level of instants in the deck. And if
well,
I
like how
did,
many Hullbreaker horrors do you think you're going to see in this?
Well,
My
no.
guess is not that many.
Well, it's not that.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
you're bouncing Thrasios back to their hand, not
yeah,
not that's the one.
It depends on
yeah,
the situation, but
and
you
I
need
just
to
think
think
like
about the thing that you don't have access to kill in another way.
Yeah.
yeah,
Like
but
the
like
bounce portion
also,
of
well, the challenge, like the tough part about that is because of the style of gameplay that I'm presenting, I don't typically have a bunch of mana just left up and open.
Yep.
Like I'm not passing my turn with 3 mana, 3 lands untapped. Whereas if you were and you were on a bunch like an 18 instance, you're playing a more mid-range interactive game plan. I think it's totally fine because you can afford to like have Flare of Dupe in your hand and or a copy effect if you're running those. But for the most part, I think the spells I've got are the ones that I really like, and they're somewhat flexible or have a higher ceiling.
I think it comes down to if you think you're going to see a lot of Kinnan and Sisse. If you do, then Dead and Gone is a very don't, then it's kind of mid.
But
Mhm.
play flute either way.
Yeah.
That's yeah. So let's go into the
So
cards that you're
of the cards that you see here, like you said that you're looking at cards that you're going to be potentially taking out, putting in. What are your thoughts after like having this discussion so far before we go through your considering pile?
Yeah, so the considering pile right now is I'm going to when are we airing this video?
afterwards.
We'll upload it after the tournament.
Okay, fair enough. I will not be playing the Batter Golem combo. I do not want to get caught with that though. So I'm not going to play Batter Golem at this event. I
Sure.
will be putting it right back in the deck afterwards. Full disclosure, right?
Okay.
So I'm off of that. I think there's some initial card decisions that I wanted to like just chat with you guys about. I
Sure.
think like let's discuss like is this really good? And again, none of these individual decisions are quote unquote in a vacuum. It's thinking about synergy with other cards. So the nice thing about a high mountain package with Arena of Glory, with Gimli, Gloin, and like other spells like that, is that it also means something like Winter Moon might be viable. And if I'm thinking about that game plan, I put them on the considering because I really am considering them. If I'm running 16, 15 or 16 mountains, and I can go again, Magda Dwarf turn 3, play Winter Moon, because I think that's the earliest you should be playing that effect. because that way you actually force them to tap some amount of lands down. I think it might be worth putting Winter Moon in the deck
I'm
now, or yeah, Moon.
so
Orb is the one where it's like, I don't know that I like that effect.
so here's my take on the deck in general. I think we are better playing under scarcity of untapped lands than our opponents, but
Hmm.
even 2 lands is too many for most interactions. And I personally think Orb locks the game down better. Um and
I completely agree with that.
for that reason alone I like Orb better, even though it's symmetrical. I don't think you want a situation where you're getting just mountains off your top decks. I want utility lands. I want to do something with my lands. I know you don't necessarily have the luxury of doing so because you're tapping out every turn, but maybe in that situation, if you are running like 17 mountains, it feels better. But in my opinion, if you give them the opportunity to untap more than one land, they're gonna, and it's gonna be enough.
Yeah,
So
so I think. Oh, yeah, you're good, Chef.
all the decks in the meta share, they're not playing more than 3 basics. So,
Hmm.
um, unless they are scared of Magus of the Moon, Blood Moon from turn 2, and they're so scared of it to the point that they're going to go fetch a basic for their first thing, which outside of
Hmm.
Kinnan is likely never going to
yep.
Yeah.
happen. Winter Moon provides a lot more value over Winter Orb,
Yeah.
because you can
So
at least break parity. But the
yeah.
problem with Winter Moon, to me, and when I was playing it, was that if I played Winter Moon and I had mountains, or I only had one mountain and another land, the most impactful spells in our deck will take multiple turns to actually get out if
Hmm.
we've tapped down for anything. So,
Yeah.
like, it just causes too many problems with our own curve, potentially, unless you hit the nuts of like 3 mountains and then you're off to the races. But
Hmm.
if you don't have at least 4 pieces of mana early enough after you've deployed this, then all they have to do is kill Magda, and that's it. And
Yeah.
then you're up shit's creek.
Well, so
So,
sure.
like,
Here's. Well, let me. I want to push back real quick and tell me if I'm wrong for thinking this. I think the play pattern in a hand where you keep Winter Moon, and you wouldn't keep it because of that, you would just keep it because it allows for something like this to happen, where you go Dwarf, Magda, I would imagine one mountain because we're on like 16, 17, and then um uh a not, a non-basic. Um your turn 3 casting that moon.
yep,
Now, when you've gone one treasure, now you're at 3 treasures. You casted the moon, you're passing, your opponents are tight on mana. When you come back for the swing, that on board you've got 5, but the card that comes after the moon is going to be something that's really, really impactful, hopefully. That would make it tougher for them to answer because they don't have either the mana or the resources to be able to. Or you just, like, you're not even a slow burn, but you just do something else. You get to 5 and you just pass and you just sit on it and wait. You get God's Pharaoh statue. Look, there's a lot of things, but I think with the orb and the moon, you're looking to cast them on turn 3. Either way.
sure.
So
My problem is that, um, if you're casting it on turn 3, because most of these decks are not creature heavy,
mhm,
outside of the ones that may play dorks.
Yep.
Dorks are not affected by Winter Moon. Neither are
mhm,
mana rocks.
Yep.
So
mhm,
a majority of the decks in the format that are also looking to be speedier are also not going to be as impacted
Yep.
by Winter.
yeah,
So, like, playing it on turn 3 is too late. It's either a play it on turn 2, or it is so like board specific if it's even good.
Yeah.
Which is another reason why I cut the card.
I don't. Yeah. I was just comparing the two. I don't think either are remotely worth it in this context.
mhm.
I think.
Well, let me say it like this. Drew, the reason I was asking, was it worth it, is if you're playing a package that's high on mountains because you want to leverage Arena of Glory with some of your 3 mana dwarves that would benefit from being hasty, like, is it worth it just because there's a sub synergy in the deck that you're already playing
No,
stacks effects with?
I almost never
I don't
consider
think that that's another reason.
99. Oh, you know,
Yeah,
it just
yeah,
you got to really front load the value on a card in almost every context.
yeah. Just a question. I think you both are correct there. It's just a wondering. And if I don't play the moon effect, then the Hammerheim and Crime Magdalens come back in.
They are free.
Because you need a well, if you have Arena of Glory, there is a risk, so you've got to play an amount of mountains.
I
I think
think that
11
if you're
is the safe
playing
number.
a hard stacks package like you are and you're not playing Mycosynth gardens, that you're probably you should probably be on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree, and that's the other thing. Like, if I take the moons out, those lands become live. I think the gardens is really good. The other one that's not on the picture that I would consider is Inventor's Fair, just as an ability to go get something. Um, but
But again, we
definitely,
want to make sure that you still maintain the red pips that you want for
Mhm,
consistency. I
yeah,
don't think you want to go up too many colorless lands.
Yeah.
yep, I agree. I think it's you bring in the 2 reds for Crime Magda, and then drop 1 basic to put Mike's Gardens, and that puts me at 11 mountains and plenty of red sources. I'm always worried about the Arena of Glory coming in tapped or untapped, no tapped, because that's brutal.
Yeah,
So
it
I just got to
sucks,
make sure
but
there's a decent amount of mountains.
um, yeah, you still need to be on enough of them. But I think that sort of synergy it's secondary, and
Mhm.
it's one of those
Hmm.
things where if it happens, it happens. I don't think that the value of that is as strong, um, specifically only for Gimli, because the hands where Gimli comes out on turn 2 because you had, you know, something that enables it that's not Soul Ring, um, is a little few and far between to where it's almost magical Christmas land, even with um, Arena
Or
of Glory coming in
yeah.
untapped.
Yeah,
So,
since Mana
like,
Crypt went away, you're playing Ghibli on turn 3. You're not really playing it before that.
I mean, you can play it on turn 2 sometimes, but it's so inconsistent
Mhm.
Yeah.
that I don't think playing Arena of Glory specifically for Gimli type thing is really where you want to be. Um, Unironically, I think Arena of Glory for hard casting your roaming throne or your Zorn or whatever. Well, it doesn't
Mhm.
matter for Zorn, but for roaming throne specifically is more value. But that's not happening all that often either. So like
Yeah.
No, yeah,
realistically, I think that you're better off playing something you know is going to get you consistency
Mhm.
versus like hoping for magical Christmas land.
Yeah.
yeah.
And I know that you're very much I'm playing for my opening 7, but I think even then, like, the math is just too low.
It's definitely possible. There's an Arena of Glory is one of those lands that I really struggle with because, again, thinking about just sequencing, there's been times where I'll go Dwarf Magda Plundering Barbarian with haste, and it's just nutty. Like, okay, I shouldn't have been able to do this, but now I can like jam, and I've got just more resources than I anticipated. Gimli's the magical Christmas land, but it's also like I guess the real Christmas land is playing 2 dwarves and then both getting haste,
Yes.
which I've never done that, but it is possible.
I've done it before. The first time I
I've
played it
done
did
it.
that.
So
I've done
Yeah.
that's
it once
yeah,
and I yeah.
yeah. I've never done it, but I know that's the ceiling. I just think like if you're playing a high amount of mountains, there's always a risk, but once you hit basically a dozen mountains, that risk is kind of um, addressed, and
I
then the ceiling is really good.
can I address
So I think also like Russ was
Oh,
saying
go ahead.
from chat
I was gonna say the same
is
thing.
that
Yeah.
um realistically, because we've gone up Caveron and we're also on Tezzeret,
Hmm.
and we're on a decent amount of vehicles, the value of something like a um Arena of Glory is just way too compartmentalized.
Yep.
Mhm.
And risky.
Because yeah, and risky. Because you get
Yeah.
a majority of the value of your dwarves from tapping in many board states. Because they can block your 2/1s, and taking you off of your resources can be better for them over, potentially drawing another card per turn cycle, depending on the
Yeah, I think
situation. Um,
and maybe it is with Knuckles and Go-Go coming out that like the haste it just isn't as important anymore. But
right.
it used to be like being able to do Arena of Glory on a top end dwarf was like enough to put you over the edge. Now we just have cards that would be better just to be able to cast.
Right. But I do think, regardless of if you're playing hard stacks or not, going up dwarves period is probably a good idea. But also, because you're not playing better golem, you probably need pretender.
I think it comes down, and that's another one that I guess I didn't put it on. Oh no, I did put it on there. That I'm definitely thinking about. And then I guess while we're on the topic of creatures, we already talked about engineer. Recruiter being able to get a spell that says you win the game the next turn is really good. But I've had the two sides of the same coin where you don't get that other turn.
Sure, but recruiter says
Or
a
you just
lot of
win.
different things.
Yeah.
Recruiter
Yeah, yeah,
says
yeah.
go get a land. Recruiter says go get uninteractable interaction from you with a you know ability to kill the opposition agent, or
Hmm.
it says go get your knuckles, go get
Hmm.
your tapper if you're playing
Go
blood
go.
boiler. Blood boiler. It
Yeah.
goes and gets go go. And since I put it back in the deck, going and getting Universal Automaton or Pinnacle Monk has been like the two things that I go for the most.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because I put this table in a very weird situation if I go and get go. Oh, they're going to win the next turn, because that means that someone tries to jam, gets stopped, and then someone before me wins before my turn, or someone decides to tutor for an answer to me trying to win,
Yep.
and then when Go-Go gets cast, Magda's dead.
Yep. That's totally fair. I like Recruiter. I've been testing it for a while, and you're right. Usually it is just automaton. But it goes back and forth where I can live without
Especially
it, but I can also see it being important.
if you're in a slow game and there's not a lot of mana rocks that have been played, and you go and get Magus of the Moon, and then everyone goes fuck. But that's also
Yeah.
like very game dependent.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you just want to have as many options, at your disposal as
Yep.
possible. Which speaking of which, thinking about like how the board states play out, like that's why Cavern Horde Dragon has been like I think Ancient Copper is the one that you're like that's real cope. I want that card to work, but it just doesn't. Um,
Right.
but Cavern Horde being a trample haste flying beater that can come down really early, turn 4, uh, reasonably, depending on the number of artifacts on the board. I think it's something to think about because it's probably the best top deck that we can have in the deck.
I don't think that Cavern Horde Dragon is consistent enough, because you basically require your opponents to have Smothering Tithe in play. And while yes, there's going to be a shitload of blue farm and Sisay and stuff, and some TNT, the
Mhm.
amount of times that you actually see like turn 3 Smothering Tithe where they get to the point where they haven't, you know, used
Just
their
one.
treasures before you can even cast your thing is hard.
Also, they can
Yeah.
sack them. They can sack them in response to the trigger. Like you'd never get it.
Oh, for sure. It would be more so it coming down and being able to cast it for a reasonable price. If you can cast that dragon for 4 mana, like you
Death
feel really
Shadow
good
is a
about it.
really, really cool card, but it doesn't help you win in CDH, right? Like
So like
getting a beater doesn't really.
the other thing is, like, because you're like talking about recruiter, right? Is that if you're not on Maskwood Nexus and you can't go like play recruiter for 3 mana, I have a bunch of treasures because it's like, turn 4 or whatever. I can't then
Mhm.
use my 4 treasures to go play go-go, then go to combat, and if I'm not on Maskwood Nexus.
Yeah.
So like I think Imperial Recruiter becomes significantly worse when that's not an option.
Your incidental
Yeah,
win line gets a lot worse.
yeah. Again, I'm not arguing with that. I think that's totally fair. I think you like if you're imagining this world where the games are going really long and they're grindy, then it's just card advantage. You know, and especially in a deck where you've got Go, PFB, um, you laugh, but Great Train Heist. Like if you can get in sometimes with those bodies, it's something to think about. The other card that the more red non-dwarf creatures I put in the deck, the more I think about playing is Flare of Duplication. Because like I would love to sack my Imperial Recruiter to Flare, but I'm just not on that card right now.
I
So I
think
think
that
for that reason, Bloodline Pretender is just better.
I think you and I have talked about that card a bit, and like Rust really likes that card, but
Mhm.
Flare is something that I think in a stacks variant of the build, like he's saying, is also just not very good. Because you don't want to be getting rid of your one dwarf that you kept when you kept a hand of dwarf stacks Magda, like as
Yeah.
your turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, right? And a
Mhm.
majority of the time you're using it defensively. So
Mhm.
like the only time that you're really using it is if it's free interaction to help you stop someone winning.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
like that's not really where you want to be.
Yeah, that's fair. So the only other creature that I considered, and this was just something to think about, was Gadrick, and it was only if you anticipated being blown out by instant speed removal spells, like on the turn where you're going to be able to push for your 5 treasures.
The
So
only
if they
thing that you
go,
need to worry about is Fire Covenant, and while yes, I think some players will play it, um, I don't think that a majority of the time that you're going to be having anything happen that's not a bounce spell or a Swords to
yeah,
Plowshares.
yeah,
You're,
I think that's totally fine, and that's why I'm not playing
and
it. It is a Tymna blocker, but
it
it's
is,
not,
but
you know,
it's just not good enough. I played it for 4 or 5 months after the bans, and I was like, oh, this card's really good because it's a pseudo vehicle. They can't block me anymore. Blah blah blah. And that's just not how it ever plays out.
Yep.
yeah. The
It's
ceiling is you cast Gadrick, you get to 5, and you cast Portal to Phyrexia. Like
yeah.
that's the ceiling on that card.
Um, but it's the ceiling on that card is actually happens so few and far between that
Yeah.
like it's
I
not
agree.
worth the slot because of that.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
then, so that's all the creatures, the combo, the lands we've already hit
I
on.
mean, don't play
I
I
Bloodline
think
think
that
Pretenders. Friends don't let friends play Bloodline.
I, I'm telling you, dude, in this version of the deck, you want as many artifact dwarves as you can get, and like
Not
workshop's
that
a
one
thing.
though,
There's no
dude.
other ones. You're playing all of them.
Don't play that one. It's not good. Um,
No, this is what we were talking about with the ability to just have a high density of artifact dwarves
yeah,
is really important. Which is why Mirror of the Forebears is on the other list. If you're expecting a bunch of like Toxic Deluge sorcery speed removal effects, then Mirrors actually isn't bad at
yeah, but you
all.
shouldn't be. Esper is not very good right now, and the one Esper deck does not play Deluge.
Yeah. Well, I think Blue Farm might be on it.
Hmm. Maybe.
I don't think it's good. I don't think it's good, but they definitely are. There are lists playing Deluge right now.
there are, but I think if 30% of the blue farm lists are playing Deluge, it's something that you can just kind of ignore.
Yep.
Yeah, you just gotta hope they don't have it. Like they're
Yeah.
not mulliganing for that specifically unless
No.
they're losing. You know,
They're
so
trying to
Unless
play.
they're in a pod with you, Rogthras, and Kinnan.
yeah.
Well, it's turn 4. Let me uh use my tutor to make sure that I don't die next turn. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah.
outside of
That's
that,
actually something
it's
worth
not.
thinking about. Well, because of the numbers, players aren't making deck building decisions because of Magda. They're just
No,
not.
not at all.
No.
We only get hurt if Blue Farm makes decisions for Rogthras.
Yes.
And again, I don't know how much Blue Farm should be worried about Rogthras if they think they can just win faster.
They can, and I
Right.
don't. I think the different flavors of Grixis, and other blue farm decks are what they're worried about.
Mm-hmm. Well, all right. So let me ask you then. So that leaves us with 2 last cards that I'm really thinking about. One is much more common. That's the Curse Mirror, but that's just because of the number of um, Bowmasters that you might expect to see, and being able to just take the table off of Bowmaster from being cloned or wiping our board might be worth it, but I'm not thinking
With
so.
you not being
The
on
other,
Maskwood Nexus, it doesn't give you any combo potential, so using it only as a break glass if there's a Bowmaster in play, if you have it in hand, is
Mhm.
too niche.
Yeah, and that's fair. So then that leaves you with the other card that I haven't been able to play, but I have slotted it and just not seen it, and that's the Warmaker Gunship. Mainly because bare minimum it kills Bowmaster, albeit can kill much more, and it also presents a tapper. And I think 3 mana is the most that you want to be paying for an effect like that. Like if I wasn't playing this, I'd be thinking about something like Sky Sovereign, which is obviously much better, but 5 mana versus 3, and that's I think a big difference. So like, what are your thoughts on Warmaker Gunship?
Sorcery speed is not where you want to be for
Yeah.
that. If you want that effect, you'd rather play Legion Extruder.
Yep. Agreed.
Well, but you're playing all your if you look at it as a vehicle,
You don't need
which
that many.
of
We just got
course.
2 more. We
How
just
many
got
do you normally play?
we just got 2 free ones is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I
So,
hear you. I hear you. My list is on. I think I'm on 5.
I think I
And
cut
then you have Tezzeret, which counts as 6. Then
yeah.
you have your land, which counts as 7.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. I've got 5 vehicles. 5 vehicles, but then you're right. The land and Tezzeret.
Yeah, and then
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, I can't imagine playing anything over 2 mana ever again with the current bevy that we have. Like
Yeah.
it would have to be another like clown car tier, like break glass in case of auto include kind of card.
Well, I think the ability to scale how much damage it does makes it much better.
It just means it's gonna
Because it.
miss the number you need some percentage of the time, not do more than you need sometimes. Like
Yeah.
that doesn't matter, right?
Yeah. So then, having gone through all these cards, where I'm currently looking at is Torpor, Flute, Gimli, Gloin, and then like on the edge of Axguard Cavalry. Because the
I,
more creatures I play, the more I like playing that card, but it's not a must play for me.
Vehicles make her a lot less important in my opinion. She's just
Mhm.
it's just dwarf density, and if you feel comfortable there, don't like play any other card in my opinion. Any other
Yeah, so I
dwarf.
see that's fair. So I'm looking at Glowing Gimli, Flute, and Torpor being the 4 that I'm like need to look for space on. And one of the ones that like cards that I've got to consider that's currently on the list is like Chrome Mox. Is that worth playing? And the reason I put it in was the importance of being able to get the early stacks piece down. But again, I really don't like the pitching cards type of effects.
Oh,
So that's something that I'm curious what you guys think about.
um, gemstones is better. Um, like
That's
I
fair.
I think realistically, like Chrome Mox Gemstone is way better than um, Diamond.
yeah,
So it really depends on what you want to do there. Um,
131
but
lands though, so keep that in mind.
I think being on 30 lands is enough. I don't think 31 is necessary, especially if you're not playing Wintermoon.
yeah.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
I could see
so
I could see going down a land.
Oh, one last thing. We haven't talked about Tibalts and Zoyoas yet. Um, we're not
Um,
we're not in
they're
we're not in a world where Tibalts will flip a basalt into a seedborn anymore. We're not in Kinnan country. We're not in it's the cards get a lot more situational in the Grixis Plus decks,
Mhm.
right? So I think I wouldn't. I'm never comfortable if I'm not running both Reb, Pyro, and then Tibalts. I think all three are just kind of awesome.
yeah,
I
I mean
like
Tybalt
I
basically
like
reads
Tybalt.
protect my win. And I
Yeah.
think that's the most important part about that card is that it hits anything.
Yep.
Hmm. I'll definitely like let that simmer. I will tell you, I like that card. I'm not opposed. I tell you what, I like it even more when there's a vexing bubble out.
Yeah,
um,
Yes.
it's good shit
yeah,
there.
it's happened before where a guy actually flipped Ristic Study. He was like, "Oh hell yeah, I'm casting that," and I go, "Vexing Trigger."
Nice.
So yeah, because the Tybalt's is a May, they don't have to cast it.
You don't get it either
But
way, or the exile
yeah, exactly.
regardless, right?
I think it goes to the bottom of the deck, but I could be wrong there. Um, so yeah, I'll definitely I'm gonna put that on my stack right here, but it would mean cutting likely a piece of interaction for it. So then it would be what interaction are
Wait,
you
are you still
cutting?
on Ghost?
Ghost Fire
Post
Slice?
vacuum.
Well, that's one of the cards that's going to get cut because it's either that or Soul Cauldron. I don't
I
think it's
mean,
both.
I personally think
Um,
you could get rid of Agatha's, but that's just me.
so
I
if
don't.
I'm worried about the two CMC stacks are rough. Just because if you're playing an effect like that, you really want to play it on turn one and then follow it up with Magda and go
Yeah.
from there. Um, and it makes for awkward play patterns if you can't play the Agatha on one with either Ancient Tomb or Soul Ring or something like that.
I don't think Agatha's is strong enough um, for what you're looking for. And if you're going all in, like I understand being scared of my uh, Bark from Harvester going to the graveyard or whatever, but like
Mhm.
you're already making concessions, not playing Battered Golem stuff. You might
Mm-hmm.
as well just go the whole way.
Yep, I agree.
Well, technically, if you have Ghost Vacuum, you can get back a card in the
Yeah,
graveyard.
but
Like
why wouldn't you just play Elixir at this point?
well, specifically that is like I expect to see a lot of breach, like that, and having the effect and the ability to eat something from a graveyard is enough to get people to stop from playing it. So it being one CMC, being Tezzeret or Saga, or just play it from your hand, like I think that's just good enough. At times, I really struggle with Agatha's mana cost. I love the idea of putting 1/1 counters on my thing, but I don't think there's gonna be a lot of creatures in the graveyard. Um, at least not like um, in every player's graveyard every game. And you're playing it more for stacks than you are playing it for value. Like
Yeah.
I've never, I mean, I haven't played Ghost Vacuum a ton, but Tezzeret's what made me bring it back. Like I don't play that card thinking I'm gonna pay 6 and bring back exiled creatures. It's just something that you could do potentially.
If that's not your goal, is to use its secondary ability, like I don't,
Well, I
it's
think it's
worth it.
incidental, like because if your bark form goes away, like that's the one thing I did want to say about having Karn in the deck is if bark form does get exiled, you can actually get it back with Karn. Um, Something not a lot of people think about, but the -2 does work on exiled creatures.
Yep.
So it's there, just like the Mycosynth can get from underneath a cage where you need Artifact Dwarf. So there are these like weird worlds where these cards kind of have value, but I don't know that you're not playing them because of that. It's just something that you need to be aware of being able to do. So I would be okay with cutting Agatha's, but I want to leave some other type of graveyard stacks effect that is a low mana cost. And I think Ghost Vacuum maybe is the best 1 mana one. You could probably say Soul Guide Lantern, but I think this having the other value just makes it better.
Hmm.
I'm not sold on it because if it's incidental, like you don't have enough things that do that. So like having one thing that does that is just not enough consistency to where it's like that's worth having, at least to me.
Rule of 8.
What's that?
You usually want to have 3 or 4 of a given effect for you to
Mhm.
really consider running a given effect.
Yep.
Unless it's like so obscenely broken that it wins you the
Right.
Well, but that's actually my kind of thought about the graveyard hate is that I want more anti-breach and also like Tim Nadargo hate and other types of like TNT hate. Like those, I think that's just good. Um, Games where you get one of those pieces out early, the breach players, it's just a collective groan of like, ugh. So now I can't go that
So
route.
the problem with playing stuff like this is that as soon as it comes up, it's just a game of chicken between the other two players as to which is going to play Breach first.
Mm-hmm. You're never going to be the first one to play it, though.
Right, but as soon as someone decides they're going to try to push through it because they have enough stuff in the graveyard where they might be able to still find an answer,
Yep.
right? Because if there's enough stuff in the graveyard to begin with, there is a way that you can completely dodge all removal when breaching, right?
Well,
So for me, in a lot of these pods, Ghost Vacuum is just going to be pointing a gun at the first player and then giving an open door to the second player.
So I agree with you, but keep in mind, like the purpose of playing stacks for me is to get the extra turn or two that I don't think I would get in a traditional setting. And if playing it and there's that game of chicken, or like I need to get more cards in my yard, so I've got to do Wheel of Fortune and some other stuff, like that's actually what I want. And doing it for 1 mana to say I can get an extra turn or two, like I'm okay with paying that. It's some of the other, like the Soul Cauldron for me is a really tough one. If it was 1 mana, it would be in the deck always. But it being 2 makes the play patterns weird. Not that the card's any worse. And I think something like Ghost Vacuum might be okay. But again, only good if you are playing it for a specific purpose. And in this case, you think you're going to play against Breach decks in every pod. And you think playing something on turn 1 is, good enough. For at least a little bit.
I mean, it's a fine choice, but like again, I don't think that with the consistency you're going to see it, that it's probably going to be better off going to some other thing that is either redundancy for something else or an effect that like is going to make a huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I mean, you're playing, if it's Ghost Vacuum, Grafdigger's Cage, and Unlicensed Hearst, that's 3
And Flute.
graveyard and Flute. Yeah, technically depends on what you're doing, but you're right.
I mean,
you can
Flute
hit
is
LED.
always good at hitting LED.
Yeah. So like you've got those style of effects. So I've got to think about it. I know for sure I was taking one of them out. Right now, I would lean towards keeping Ghost Vacuum in, and taking
My
Soul
opinion
Cauldron
is
out.
to take Soul Cauldron and Ghost Vacuum out, and then use that extra slot to put in your artifact dwarf so that you can go up in dwarf.
Mm-hmm.
I would go up Blood Boiler before I'd go up either Forebears or Bloodline Pretender. It is both a dwarf and a vehicle.
No. Right now, the only ones I've like got on my for sure is Glowing Gimli, Flute, and Torp Orb, with maybe Trickery if I find another instant that I would prefer to take out. But those 4 are the ones that I'm like really looking at right now. And I think taking out one of the graveyard effects that we were just discussing, and maybe a land, and then maybe Chrome Mox, because again, I just don't like pitching cards. And I think I'd rather just stick with Amber if I've got 30 plus lands.
Well, you're still
Or sorry,
on
Diamond.
Mox Diamond,
Yeah,
but
sorry, Diamond was what I meant to say.
again, I still think that the land is better than Diamond.
But I think you
The
should run both.
Gemstone Caverns.
So yeah, so I think that's where I'm at. I think I'm looking at what am I going to cut for Glowing Gimli, Flute, and Torp Orb, and I'll probably just like sleep on that, and then I'll have a list for sure tomorrow. I'm gonna test. I'll be play testing for the next 3 days, and then just go from there.
I mean, if you are asking me, just looking at the cards that are different between the decks, I'd probably
Tangle Wire, beep boop.
Yeah.
I
mean,
like Tanglewire, man.
I know you do. I know. I'd probably cut Heist, Ghost Vacuum, Agatha's, and Mycosynth Lattice. Those 4 would be the first 4 that I'd cut. I'd cut Arena of Glory for Gemstone, because I don't actually find it to be that attractive of a land anyway. I mean, realistically, it's the moons. It's always going to come down to, are the moons worth it? At 3,
he will never not play the moons.
Right.
I'm playing. I'm a moon gamer.
Like Ragavan, I think is going to be a fairly mid card, but like he's safer. I mean, okay, so here let's do a thought experiment. I'm comparing Ragavan to Blood Boiler in their potential to make treasures on their own effectively.
So the way that you have to look at it is that Ragavan turns on both moons and Tanglewire as a turn 2 option.
That's true. That's
And
true.
Mox, it turns on Mox Amber. I evaluate Ragavan as a 1-mana dwarf that also has the upsides of all the other cards. But I would not play it into a meta where I expect there to be a ton of creatures. So like I have been off Ragavan, but going into what I expect to be 1 or 2 decks that won't have cards or creatures that they want to trade with, I think it's actually worth it.
All right. Well, I think we've more or less hit all the cards we wanted to talk about in terms of like maybe boards and stuff. Let's talk strategy. Um, so it's a big, big, like powerhouse tournament, right? Like, not every big guy is going to be there because like people like Ian are gonna go play, um, gonna go play in the Open instead of the Invitational, but it's gonna be exclusively top tier players. How's that gonna change your like mulligans and play? What do you think?
So it's funny. My buddy actually in one of my discords posted that question as like a thought of, which event is more difficult if 2 of the top Elo players don't play in the event. You gotta like the thing to think about is like the average Elo of a player in this invitational is north of 1700. Like there you didn't just like oops into this event. So if you got here, not only did you probably grind to some degree, you're also good.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't take anything for granted. I fully expect that my opponents know all the things I'm gonna do. I don't expect to do any tricks or to like get anybody. Like I might be able to steal a game in a in a Swiss at a a locals event maybe. But with that being said, there's the flip side to that where I'm also expecting my opponents to make the correct plays all the time, which should lead to us having the opportunity for windows. Whereas locally, turbo players will just jam, and I might not get an opportunity if I don't stick an early stacks piece.
Sure.
I think that I would. I think I'm going to get turn 3 more than I won't get turn 3,
Okay.
which again is a very pivotal turn for my play style.
Sure.
So I expect players to interact. I expect players to know how everyone's deck works and for them to play tight. But I think it's going to play fast too. I don't think it's going to be slow. Um, I'd be surprised if a ton of games went well past turn 4.
Yeah, that makes sense. We've kind of answered a lot of these. So the question I want to know is, which deck do you think you're going to be of the ones that we've seen? Let's look at the list of top 10, top 8. Which one do you think you're going to be able to leverage as the problem that someone else has to solve while you do Magda things?
It depends on of course which one's in the pod, but
Right, but if you're running into any one of these in a pod,
well, there's always Blue Farm, but I expect Blue Farm to be the deck that's going to have to answer some of these other decks.
mm-hmm.
I think Rogthras is a bigger threat than Magda, and I don't think it's close.
Yeah.
And because of that, again, what I'm hoping is that the answers for Rogthras also don't coincidentally answer us. So that's a little tough in that regard. I think decks like Sisei's weird because Sisei you don't even really have to interact with her; it's the other creatures. Um, Timna Dargo is going to be a problem for some of these decks because it's really good. It's
Goes
also
Burr.
surprisingly fast.
Yeah.
Which is why like the turn 1 like Ghost Vacuum, Draft Digger's Cage, like those types of effects I'm really thinking about. But
Okay.
again, I'm always worried about the turbo deck. So if I'm in a pod, there's Roxai. I'm yapping that. Hey, what are we doing about Roxai? Like I'm gonna mulligan to try to find a stacks piece, but if I can't find it, please have some interaction because otherwise we're not gonna get a turn 3.
Yeah. I mean that makes sense. So You're teching towards not losing to those guys, and then grinding out the more pivot oriented decks, and then just presenting a win when it's most effective.
Yeah, I mean, this is the other thing, and Magda pilots don't want to hear this, but like, we're not the best deck in the event.
We're certainly not.
It's just I have felt like over the past few months, every time I'm in an event, I feel like my back's against the wall. I never feel like I just have wins. And there's been times where I've just been casually playing Blue Farm now at FNMs and stuff, where I'm like, I kept a hand that was DRC and played turn two Timna, and on my DRC trigger off the Lotus Petal, I saw Necro, and I played turn two Necro, and then just won on the next turn. I was like, this deck's on easy mode. Like you
Yeah,
don't
no,
ever get that with Magda.
no.
So you need to leverage that though, right? Because you mentioned players will either overhate it or underhate it,
Mhm.
and you need to be selling why you're not the problem. There are other decks that are more powerful and are likely more threatening than we will be until we're the problem. So
Yeah.
it's a fine line.
We are in that weird area of obviously capable of winning practically any game of CDH.
Yeah.
But obviously not the player that's going to go first and isn't the one that
Hmm.
people should be looking at first. So there
Hmm.
is power in that, but you have to be very, very good at leveraging it and luckier
Yeah.
than the people that are
Yeah.
playing on, like you
Luck,
said, easy
luck,
mode.
luck is absolutely a thing. Like no one wins a CDH tournament without a little bit of luck, and I can say myself included. But to your point, we've won major tournaments. It's possible. You just got to really hope that other players interact with each other before before we get the opportunity to present wins.
Yep.
But I think it's possible. I think that will happen here. But again, it's not going to be something where we just cheese out. I think every win is going to be like a slog fest, and you got to have to expect that players are going to try to interact with you when you try to win.
Yeah. Agreed.
There's also something to be said of a lot of players don't think that Magda will present first because they think they'll get to 5, they'll hold their treasures, and then they'll try to go off over them. But
Hmm.
there are plenty of times where I've had opponents just tap out, do what they need to do, or not leave a blue open. They only have a black open or something, and I'm just like, if they have the Oppo, they have the Oppo, or the dark
Oh
red
yeah.
Oppo or
Oh yeah.
whatever. So it's
Oh
like,
yeah.
you know, I'd say a majority of the time, not a majority, probably 40% of the time that I get wins, it's just like, I'm just gonna make them have it, bro. Like, go for it.
But that's what I agree with you, but it's like I don't know that that play style happens here. I like if we're hoping that Blue Farm is going to play like that, I think I would actually think more it would be along the lines of deck building choices where they ask themselves like, should I be playing Oppo when I can just play other cards that are going to
Right.
outvalue because Appa leaving 3 mana up is a lot for a blue farm player.
Yep.
So that's where I hope we go. That's where I hope blue farm goes, where they go down like pieces like Oppo. They go up interaction for their opponents, and then they just try to protect their wins. And they get into stack battles, and they've got to fight, and then we can end up winning out in the long run in that exchange. But Bowmaster is always going to be a thing. We know that. So anytime there's a blue farm player in the pod, you've got to worry about it. But if they've got it, they've got it. I just don't think they're looking for it.
I
Is
think
all.
they're also playing a little bit greedier than they were maybe like 3 months ago, 4 months ago.
Mhm. Yeah, I like your average blue farm player is like, well, at least some of the lists that are getting like published and publicized. They're trying to play like fast. They're playing like
Yeah.
Reign of Filth, and like they're trying to get a turn one, Fish or Esper, or a turn two Ristic, and then they want to jam, turn three and draw cards off of the stack battle that's going to end soon.
Yep. Agreed. All right. I think that really covers everything. You know what your cuts and or what you're gonna mull over your your cuts and ads. We've talked about practically all of us throughout the series of the episode. Is there anything else to talk about that's not on the slide?
No, no, I think I'm gonna sleep on some of the choices. I'll share the list with you guys tomorrow, and then we'll play some games over the next couple of days. But no, I think it's it's this event for me is again, I'm not a moral victory kind of player at all, but it's been a full year. August 3rd was the first CDH tournament I ever stepped into.
Uh-huh.
And for one year on Magda, and this being my only deck, I felt like it was a hell of a run to get here. But that being said, I'm not showing up to just be happy I'm at the table.
Well, I'm
So I'm pushing for 3 wins. 3 wins is what my goal is at the event, and I'm hoping that 3 wins and whatever else happens is enough to make the top cuts.
well, yeah, no, being one of the best 64 CDH players is pretty phenomenal regardless. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, we're hoping for a dwarf bringing home the gold. That's the idea. Um,
Well, I said this after
mhm.
10K in February, and I'll say it again. Like, I would not be where I'm at with Magda or any of my tournament success without the community. So, I love reading the stuff people post. Sometimes it gets a little ridiculous, but it's always funny to like think about. And that's it. We don't want to be a deck that ever gets stagnant. So I
Yep,
think always going back to old cards, considering sometimes the outlandish, is things that are totally fine and acceptable.
yep,
So people will give you hate sometimes for pitching things, but you'll be shocked. Sometimes there are card choices that can really work, especially
yep.
if you know what you're teching for and what you anticipate on playing against. So that's it. Just keep innovating, keep playing.
Yeah,
Play old cards, play new cards.
I, I,
Um,
I would
and
I would generally say that a good quarter of our most of our improvements to the deck come from printings and things that are just so obviously busted and good that they designed it for us. Thank you, R and Dwarf. But a quarter of our improvements are easily, iconoclastic, non-group thinky dwarves that try something over and over again and see if it works, and eventually we start putting Mishra's Workshop in the 99, and we can thank you for that revelation. So
City of Traders too was like,
yeah,
there's just certain things that, and I guess I'll say it like this: Wizards will always continue to print busted artifacts, and we've got such a deep card pool that there could be combos and effects out there that might just get overlooked. I mean, I think we've done a pretty good job of looking at a lot of things, but who knows? I mean, there could definitely be something out there that no one's considering right now that might be good. If not now, another set from now.
yeah. There's always call time too.
Yeah,
There's also dwarves coming up in whatchamacallit, uh Lorwyn. So we'll
they're
see.
gonna all be Boros or mono white.
Hey, if only to tease us and then give us like another changeling. It's also the changeling set,
Yeah,
guys. Let's not
yeah.
overlook
Just
that. We're gonna get a fucking
just
artifact.
one mana dwarves.
Yeah, give me a 1 mana changeling that I don't know shuffles our deck or something. Who knows? Anyway, it was good. It was good talking, buddy. It was really interesting to have a different kind of content digging through, prepping, and talk to someone who obviously approaches the deck from a very different perspective than I do and Show does. Show, thank you for driving a lot of the nitty gritty because you are much more equipped to do so than I am. Appreciate you, bud.
Anytime.
Yeah,
And go fuck him up. Go show him why one color
yeah.
is better than four.
Yeah, look, I'm hoping that we follow up this video getting posted with uh, what time are we doing the next one?
Right, exactly.
So,
Absolutely.
like I said, my goal for the event is 3 wins. If 3 wins is enough, then I'm happy. If it's not, then so be it. But I think 3 wins and some change would be. I would be very, very, very happy if I get 3 wins in
I
this event.
mean,
So that
it's
is
cert
my goal for the event.
it's certainly worth an addendum regardless because again, it's going to be the highest level of Magda gameplay we're going to see probably for another year at least. So,
Yeah, I
anyway,
just can't go 07.
no, yeah, don't do that. That's what
And let's
Heliod's
not
for.
forget Rust
Yeah.
for
That's my
being
joke.
being in chat.
That's been my joke.
Oh
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
thanks, Russ.
Rust was here the entire time and feeding us excellent information and questions and whatnot, and he cannot be forgotten. He is silent
Yeah.
though, and
Also, boss, Russ said that he'll pay you $100 to play Forbidden Orchard and Chaos Warp and only
Oh
win by
God.
using that
Oh.
line.
that'll buy a meal.
Oh man. Yeah, yeah. Look, I already made the joke to my buddies that this is just a trip to Pittsburgh. There just happens to be a Magic tournament that I'm showing up to. So
Yeah.
you know, if
Okay.
it's 0-7, I can it's a good baseline for next year.
All right. I'm gonna stop the episode before Rust promises you his like one ring or something stupid to do it. All right. Have a good night, everyone.